That sounds good to me. So it's a little 6:05. Everyone, I apologize for taking up more of your time than necessary. Everyone, thank you for coming. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order for the District 1 Advisory Board. Starting off at the top, let's see. Agenda. Anybody get a chance to take a peek at the agenda and have anything that needs to be changed? Seeing no specific inputs, I will make a motion that we approve the agenda. Is there a second?
I second.
Has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
As you vote, can you
actually, we're going to go one by one.
as you make a motion, can you say like I, Aaron Mays, move that we accept the agenda, and then second by Gabe, so everyone can hear that is not seeing the meeting?
And I'm not sure if it was other people that didn't get that as well, but if you are going to second a motion, why don't you say your name for Camila as well? Aaron Mays made the motion, and who was that seconded? Forgive me.
Gabriel.
Very good. We'll go ahead and move forward with that. With most of the videos
So
actually
Aaron,
off,
your mic,
and I'm going to go down the list.
I'm sorry, Aaron, your mic is going in and out. I'm not sure if anyone else having a problem hearing Aaron. So yes, they're shaking their head. They're having a problem hearing you. So let me do roll call for DAB real quick for voting. From my screen for the agenda, Katie, raise your hand if you say yes. Michaela, I see yours. Wanda, Don, I see you. Tex, I see you. Gabe, I see you. Aaron, for agenda, got you. And Danielle Johnson, can you go to the chat or? Aye, thank you. I do not see any other DAB members. If you're on here and we don't see your name, you want to vote for the agenda, please speak up. So far, I have 8 DAB members.
I think that's sufficient. Anyone that's actually opposed, please unmute and note so. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. Approval of the minutes. Anybody get a chance to take a peek at those? While people are contemplating that, Camila, first of all, thank you. Another large set of minutes. Question or clarification as it relates to the off-agenda item. Is there a case number that was actually talked about in that section? And the other thing I wanted to go ahead and...
Is this pertaining to that property that was out south in Sunnyside Neighborhood Association?
The one on South Chautauqua.
Yeah, there is not a public case note that I can share at this moment, but I do have an update when we get there. To update.
Okay, sounds good. The only other thing that I had with minutes was with the action taken. I think it might be helpful to go ahead and clarify that we said we wanted to talk about this again in April-ish.
Action taken for the case. I have a new update, so you won't need that. But okay, I see what you're saying.
That was what happened at the meeting. If there's new information, that's great. Anybody else see any issues, anything that they would like to make note of in the minutes? All right. Move that we actually approve the minutes with the noted changes and updates. Is there a second?
This is Gabe. I second.
Very good. Thank you for actually noting your name. Any further discussion? I'm assuming none, considering the fact that there wasn't any more talk. All those in favor, raise your hand for the picture, pretty please. Otherwise, we'll
Yes
call on
to Katie. I see yes to Nikayla. I see yes to LaWanda. I see yes to Gabriel. I see yes to Aaron. I see yes to Tex. Yes to Don. Danielle,
Aye.
thank you. And that's your 8 again for now, 8-0. Approval of the minutes with the addition of.
That sounds good. Fantastic. And with that, we will roll directly into the staff reports. And we'll start off with Wichita Fire Department, please.
Good evening, Battalion Chief Scott Kleinschmidt. Just give you guys some quick stats here for District 1. In the city for the month of January, there was 18 working structure fires. Of those 18, 3 were in District 1, North Lorraine, South Lulu, and North Pinecrest. Also in District 1, there was a total of 708 incidents that we responded to. Of those, 607 were medical alarms, 66 were service alarms, and 35 were fire alarms. That included the 3 working fires. Anybody have any questions on those?
Does anybody have any questions? Seeing head nods or shakes anyway. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it, sir.
You bet.
Anybody else from Wichita Fire? Okay, assuming not, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to Wichita Police Department, please.
Hello, this is Officer Malloy, Wichita Police Department, Patrol East, Community Policing. So I was just looking at over some of the stats for the year so far, and it seems for January, the uptrend in violent crime is still very present. So we're trying to address that in various ways out east. We've continued working the hotel motel interdiction. We've been very successful with several felony arrests. We're getting a lot of drugs and weapons out of there. And a lot of these people are connected as suspects on violent crime across the city, not just in East hotels. So that's one thing that we've really targeted and been really successful at. Highlight some data from the flock cameras. If everyone's aware of the flock, the new license plate readers, we've got about 100 of them across the city, and they've been very helpful. Let's see, so far, we're on a 3-month trial. We still got about another month to go. I think it ends late February. But to date, we've collected over $1.3 million in vehicle assets, 115 vehicles recovered, 120 arrests, mostly felony. 17 guns have been seized, lots of illegal narcotics and other drugs. And the average time to recover a stolen car has been reduced to 4 days, which is just, it's uncomparable, because before it was months or whatever. It just really was very greatly. Let's see. And then last weekend, the Patrol East Community Policing team came in on Saturday, and we worked with the Domestic Violence Intervention Response Team. And I know we made over 7 arrests. We contacted dozens of victims, and we were able to get advocates and detectives in person with those victims and get them updated and ensure that they had the adequate resources they needed. And then we did several spot checks for no contact violations. And so, like I said, there was at least 7 arrests, but the more important thing was I think we contacted 20 to 40 victims that otherwise wouldn't have been contacted that day. So that was really successful. And even though it rained a little bit on us, it was still a fun time to do and make those connections with everybody. Let's see. And really, I think that's about it for Patrol East. Any questions?
Just going to ask you, can you tell us a little bit more about the readers? And forgive me, Luanda, I jumped in there, and then you'll go next.
Sure. So the flock cameras are license plate readers Right now, they're on a trial basis, so the city didn't have to pay anything, and the company came out here and has put them all up in various locations throughout the city. And the great thing, they're solar powered, and we're able to monitor locations. Now, the cameras work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but they're only accessed when we're looking for something specific. So if a stolen vehicle happens to drive by, the system will automatically generate a notification. So officers in the area can get an instant pop-up within 30 seconds to a minute or two that, hey, this stolen vehicle is in this area, last seen going eastbound. Or let's say, for instance, a robbery occurs and we have a suspect vehicle. I can log in and enter that suspect vehicle's license plate and see if there's been a recent hit on Flock telling me where they might be now. So I might say, hey, the vehicle I'm looking for was last seen at Central and Woodlawn. So we can allow officers to start heading that way to look for that. So it's solved numerous homicides, robberies. It's honestly blown a lot of our minds as officers. We didn't realize the type of information that we were missing without having them. So the big thing with that will be just the funds, if we're able to acquire that long term or not. So
Very good. Thank you. LaWanda.
Yeah, initially when the cameras were talked about in the pilot program, it was supposed to be used only for stolen vehicles. So it sounds like the project expanded. Is that the case?
I wasn't there for the initial briefings of the pilots. I was only trained initially for what the system was capable of. So as to whether or not the program's been increased or reduced or additional features added, I'm not aware of that. I just know the capabilities from day one that I've had access to, as well as other officers.
Right. And you said the cameras is 100 cameras, and do you know where exactly they're located, or where in the city?
Yeah, they're throughout the city, at just different locations. Yeah.
I mean, the concern when the first came out, the concern was that they would be overly populated in District 1. And so I guess I'm asking you, have they been evenly distributed in all districts of the city, or do you not know?
I do not know.
I think criminals go everywhere, so I personally hope they're everywhere. But anybody else have any questions?
I remember hearing some senior staff when this first rolled out mentioned that there was often an overlap when looking at stolen vehicles and also going after folks or finding out that the individual who stole the vehicle also had an illegal firearm on them or were involved in another crime. And I think that's, even if they're just sticking to that, maybe they've expanded, that there's a lot of overlap when it came to the first few individuals that they had apprehended from the cameras. I was wondering if is there any concern or pushback from other cities using this pilot program, as well as from anyone in the community around, I know you said it sounded like, officer, you said that there has to be already a police report going on or a crime in progress where you're looking up the individual. Has there been any concern or pushback on privacy or how long that last known information is kept of where a certain license plate was?
I can answer part of the question I can answer is that the data is only kept for 30 days. And then your other question, I can't answer the specifics on all of that, but I do know I won't get a notification unless an officer has generated that, whether through NCIC, where we can generate local alerts. Hey, this vehicle was a suspect in a drive-by shooting. Develop reasonable suspicion to stop the vehicle if you can and identify who's in the car.
And then do you have any of the information of pricing if the city council was to take this on in the budget once the pilot program goes up?
No, I believe that's above my pay grade right now. So.
All right. I appreciate your time. Thank you, officer.
Of course.
Tadon.
I just had a question to follow up LaWanda's conversation, wanting to know who to contact to find out the information she was asking about.
Hey, this is Camila. Let me jump in and say I'll just take all these notes and send them to the Councilmember Johnson, get that data for us.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other discussion, comments, questions for our officer? All right, seeing none, officer, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you all. I hope the rest of the year goes well for everybody.
Yeah, very good. Is there another representative from the police department? Not seeing
Officer
it.
Chad Burnett, if you guys can hear me okay.
We sure can. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my computer Zoom evidently didn't like my pretty face on there or something, so I'm going to have to do this via just the phone for you guys, if that's all right. I'm Officer Chad Burnett. I'm out Patrol North District here at 21st and Hillside. We do have a couple of projects going on out of Patrol North. This Saturday, we're doing they're calling it a burn rubber assignment, but we're collecting, for whatever reason, over the past few months, there's been a lot of complaints coming in, a lot of calls from citizens about the dumping of tires illegally. And we've kind of pinpointed certain spots all over town on where those are occurring at. We've contacted the owners of a lot of these establishments to make sure they are aware, and we're also assisting with the cleanup. Our community police team is coming in this Saturday, and we've contacted Mr. Waters with Public Works who's going to assist us with the trailer out of this stuff, and we're going to be picking up a lot of these and taking them away for a lot of the citizens. A lot of the businesses are having problems with the illegal dumping out there. So that is one assignment we're doing for this weekend. Past week, we did do a traffic assignment at one of the high accident intersections that was in the top 5 for 2020, or for 2020 anyway, at K96 and Rock. We did, for just 1 hour, we went out there last Thursday from 1 to 2, and we just cited individuals who were texting or doing inappropriate things that they shouldn't be doing while driving on their phones. And we ended up in that hour, we made 12 stops and ended up issuing 11 citations for texting and driving during that hour as well. 2 other things, kind of positive stuff here, but we did have 3 officers out of the District 1 area go to Washington, D.C. For the inauguration last week. And they said they had a great time with it. They kind of got to get sworn in as officers temporarily up there and stuff. So from everybody that I've contacted that actually made that trip up there, said it was a great experience, and they treasured the time that they got to spend up there with a lot of other agencies here as well. Lastly, as far as the stats for the new year anyway, auto thefts are definitely not an all-time high, but they are definitely, compared to last year, are definitely on an uptick. And so we are just kind of advising everybody. And if you watch the WPD Facebook page, I know Lieutenant Bruno is on there a lot discussing where auto thefts are occurring in the area, things to watch out for. But just hiding your items, make sure you're locking your cars, of course, and then taking your keys out of your cars are 3 big things that we're just telling everybody. And even because we still got the cold weather around us and the warming up of the cars, if you don't have any kind of automatic start system in your car, either do one of the things, either sit at your picture window and watch that car the entire time it's warming up if you want to do that, or then sit in your car and just suck it up for about 5-10 minutes till all your ices get defrosted anyway. So it just saves a lot of heartache and unneeded time and unneeded bus riding or carpooling or whatever you want to call it if you do lose your car for something silly like that. So we're just asking for the help from the citizens in that and just trying to minimize those auto thefts that are kind of on an uptick for this year. Other than that, unless anybody's got any questions, that's all I got for you.
Very good. Are there any questions for Officer Burnett? Looking around, not seeing any. Sir, thank you very much for your service.
You bet. Have a good day.
You too. The last representative of fire, looking at the screen, I'm guessing that is. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 3 of staff reports, Public Works and Utilities.
Hi there, my name is James Wagner. I'm filling in for Gary tonight. I have some quick updates here. Couple of the park projects here, McAdams Swimming Pool and Linwood Park Splash Pad are estimated to be completed around May of this year. Edgemore Park Splash Pad is slated for a preliminary startup date towards the end of February. It still won't open until the season begins, but that one is closing up, getting ready to do a full test of the equipment. 17th Broadway to I-135. Its estimated completion date is in the second quarter of 2021. So sometime here in the next several months. Emporia two-way conversion, Dewey to Central. The project has started. Sidewalk and pole foundations are in progress, and its estimated completion is sometime in the second quarter of 2021 as well. Arterial Street pavement preservation, Hillside Central to 9th. That work is slated to get started again here in March sometime. And I don't know how long that's going to take, but it shouldn't take too long to finish that up. And then one of the big news for the area is that the North Junction, we had put in a grant request for the gold phase and granted 21 out of $24 million, and KDOT has agreed to add $4 million out of their budget to close the gap for that extra $4 million so that the city and county don't have to fill that void. Other than that, I don't have anything. I'm welcome to answer questions if I can.
Some really good news in there. Any questions for
I
James?
have a question. James, I know you're just filling in, but I had some questions and concerns on street qualities and repairs. And I was told that some of the work is just facial work, superficial, just cosmetic. So at some point, can you guys maybe give us pictures of what's cosmetic and what really is a concern that we should call in for repairs to the streets? Does that make sense?
Sort of. Anytime you have a pothole in the road that's possible to cause tire damage, that call needs to go into the maintenance department so they can come out there and respond to that and get that taken care of. So in that regard, if you have something like that, the calls are welcome anytime you see the potholes starting to develop. That happens especially on rainy and snowy days when the pavement stays really wet. So those are the important ones to call in right away. Other stuff like if you've got broken curbs or just in general, the road starts to look a little bit cracked up or something like that. Those are more of things that are a long-term type project. So as far as like some of our treatments, a lot of our treatments are what they call an oil and small rock overlay type materials. Those are, I wouldn't say just superficial, but they mainly rejuvenate the asphalt that's already there as opposed to adding more structure to that. And a lot of our projects are that so that we can extend the life of all of the pavement that we have, not just going in there and removing and replacing for brand new.
Right.
Your tax dollars stretch a lot further, and we get a lot more life out of our pavements by doing that.
Right. It would just be helpful to kind of get some visuals because, like I said, I turned in some street repairs and it didn't really meet your guidelines. And I'm just curious as to what would.
It's a lot of the times it's case by case basis. You start getting into the weeds there. There's so many different things that could happen. It's so difficult to pinpoint anything. I could give you 100 slides and that may not even that may not be what you're talking about in the circumstances that you've pointed out previously.
All right. Does somebody normally come out and take a look? Because I sent in pictures. I don't think anybody came out to look. I don't think. But is that customary? You just send a picture, or does somebody literally comes out to the street and assess it?
I think it's a little bit of both. A lot of the times, I think with COVID, I think some of the staffing levels have been down a little bit. In the past, pretty much nearly every claim was investigated, and I'm not so sure they're not doing that. I can't give you that exact answer, but I know they will come out and review just about anything that's turned in for something specific. Now, they may go out and look at it online through like Google Maps prior to coming out there, so they might have an idea of what's there if it's something that's happened long and it's been there a long time.
All right, thank you.
So Yeah, sorry I can't answer your questions exactly there.
No problem. Thank you.
James, thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on.
All right, take care, guys.
Yep, have a good evening. We'll move into Park and Recreation. And with me, Camila, are you going to talk about this one or is someone else going to?
We've got Corey on to talk about that.
Can you guys hear me?
We can now, yes, thank you.
Hey, my name is Corey Lyons. I'm a director over at McAdams Rec Center. I'm here to give the highlights for the rec centers in District 1. I'm just going to go down the list of what I have and what I got sent. Edgemoor, spring session classes. They're going to offer photography classes and soccer and basketball clinics. They also going to bring in 2 new dance classes. They're going to have work dance fitness and extreme hip hop, to just name a few. Their gym rentals are doing pretty good. They're kind of winding down. So if anyone is looking for a gym rental or know anybody, they can contact Janaea at Edgemoor. Sorry about that. One sec. There has been a few classes that have been going steady through the pandemic with yoga and fitness classes. And also, if anybody wants a hard copy of the guide, they will have to subscribe, and you can do that on the website. You do that once a year, and you get all the guides throughout the year. Because now they're online only. If you don't subscribe, Woodard revenue is doing well with their private lessons. They have had an increase of 48% in revenue. Woodard is on track to triple their revenue during the winter session. At the end of January 2021, there are 40 lessons. They're making $600 in revenue, and there's still 2 months left for this session. And due to the high demand of lessons, they're looking for additional instructors as well. Their boxing and kickboxing and private boxing is doing good. They are accounted for $729 in generated revenue after an instructor's costs. So that's going to be 143% cost recovery for them. The gym rentals are also increased by 25% from January 2021 compared to January 2020. The rentals account for $1,400 in revenue, even with the nonprofit loss of $124. Linwood Recreation Center has partnered with the Wichita Shooting Stars to provide archery classes at Golden Community Center. They have been doing this now for the past 2 years to offer archery classes during the winter sessions. Linwood is currently has about 5 long-term rentals with basketball and soccer that generates about $237 a week for them. The Linwood Library has actually moved out on January 15th. And then they said the agency will be greatly missed with the Linwood Recreation Center because the community used that library a lot. The new location is on 4195 East Harry. McAdams highlights, the fitness classes are getting back to normal. We added 2 new classes with Fit Kazumba that focuses on strengthening the core, lower back, and calves. Pickleball starting back up. Our new times at McAdams is going to be 2:30 to 4:30, Monday, Thursday, and Friday. And we're also having our first daddy-daughter dance scheduled for February 27th from 6 to 8. If anyone would like to sign up, they can call McAdams or they can do that online, and they can sign up for that. And that's it for Park and Rec. Anybody have any questions?
I do have a question, Corey.
Yeah.
You mentioned that at Woodard, the demand for more lessons, so you were seeking more. Is there, I think that's what was Woodard. Is there a theme or a concept of lessons or classes that you're looking to fill?
So they have on here piano and drum lessons. So I guess it's more geared towards that. Do you have somebody in mind that teaches a certain subject?
I mean, there's so many talented folks here, so I'm sure I'm sure I do, but just trying to get an idea of, so it sounds like in the arts, maybe music and in that,
right.
that category is what the focus is.
Anybody think of that is wanting to be an instructor for anything, they're more than welcome to send them to anybody in the Park and Rec to just to offer different classes than they're having in other areas.
Gotcha. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Corey, thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Yep, you too. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to Wichita Public Library.
Okay, this is Ann Ethan from the Wichita Public Library. A quick follow-up to what Corey just said. The Linwood Park Branch Library did close on January the 15th. And today, the new Ronald Waters Branch Library opened in front of the old Harry Street Mall. We are open only, curbside service only, so it'll be a while before people can get in and see how beautiful it is. Since I work for the library, I was able to get a tour today, and it's absolutely lovely. It's at least double the size of the old Linwood Park branch. Brand new furniture, brand new everything. It's a real nice addition to District 3. What that means is a library has left District 1, and of course we don't like that, but this new library is much needed in District 3. All of our locations are operating with curbside and drive-up window service only. You can borrow materials by placing holds through the catalog or by calling your branch location. We are not charging the usual hold and transfer fees of 25 cents per item. We will do copying, printing, and faxing service from the curbside or the drive-up if you need those services. A reminder that the 2021 NEA Big Read Wichita continues through Sunday, February the 21st. There is still programming scheduled for the last few weeks of our annual Community One Book Reading Program. This year's book is Circe by Madeline Miller, and you can find more information at bigreadwichita.org. And finally, we do have a new email address for those who are using our mobile printing by emailing their documents into the library. We do have new email addresses for all of our locations. They're all much shorter, a little simpler to use. But if you go to our website, wichitalibrary.org/print, and go down to mobile printing, you can find those new addresses. Then once you've updated that in your address book, you won't need to remember it anymore. But we did significantly simplify those email addresses to make it easier to do mobile printing. And that is all I have right now, unless anyone has any questions.
Looking across the screens, anybody? Seeing none, Anne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so there are no items for scheduled items in public agenda number 6. Last week was the first week our first meeting in a while. We actually had some off agenda items. This would be an opportunity for anybody that needed to speak on an issue that has not already been identified in the agenda. Are there any off agenda items that need to be talked about tonight? Seeing Pam, were you going to say something?
Yes, thank you so very much. I was trying to see how to raise my hand, and I'm not seeing that, but I am going to turn my video on real quick. So hopefully you guys will be able to see me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Pam McEwen. I am so thankful that I've got an opportunity to actually stop by your meeting this evening. I just wanted to pop in for a second because I wanted to let you guys know about an amazing program that I think would really benefit the families and the children and the learners from District 1. If you don't know me, I'm an educator, but I'm also the owner and the founder of the Izora Elaine Dean Educational Center. We are actually located off of Harry and Webb, and we have an amazing remote learning program that's happening right now here in Wichita. We have several learners from across the city who've actually signed up for the program, along with their families, and we got a couple of them from District 1 who actually attend our program. The amazing thing about the program is that it does serve kindergarten through 12th grade. It is called the Flex program because we know that we are living in a time where we have to be as flexible as possible. So we're working with parents and families on their schedules so that they can determine when they need to bring their kiddos in for remote learning. The nice thing about the program is that it allows certified educators and other people who are in that field to actually monitor and double dose and help kiddos while they're actually getting their remote learning. So instead of a kiddo just sitting at home and trying to figure out how to navigate through Microsoft Teams and how to turn in all those seesaw assignments, and parents being upset because they realize, like, my kid is missing all of these assignments, we've actually got people in who are actually able to help them with that. The nice thing about the program is that if it's full-time, families can attend for $150 a week. If it's part-time, then they can attend for $75 a week. Now, I'm excited to announce that we received a grant for the program from the Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund. So with this grant, it allows us really to slide the fee. And so I really want the program to help the families and the kids that need it the most. And so I am wanting to get kiddos in, and they can absolutely attend the program for free if they can show that they have that need. On top of that, we also offer free breakfast, free lunch, and snacks. So we have all of that set up for kiddos so they don't have to worry about doing anything but showing up with a smile and their computer and their materials and being ready to learn, and then we'll take it all from there. We also offer our academic coaching with this as well. So the way that the academic coaching works is if, for instance, if you've got kiddos who are attending remotely, then you know that every couple of weeks they have materials that need to be picked up. Instead of having families have to take off from work and jeopardizing their job for that, we go pick those materials up for them. For instance, we had a kiddo who cracked a screen on Friday. I was at AMAC today, picking up another computer for that little friend. And so we really,
Pam,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Pam, this is Camila, help facilitate the timing. We only have 5 minutes allotted for each presenter on the public agenda. Can you put your information in the chat so I can pass this on in the minutes, because we have some other agenda items. We'll gladly share if this is an educational opportunity, but we cannot share promotional events during this meeting.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was not quite sure about that, but I will share my information. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Are there any other off-agenda items?
Richard Ruth has his hand raised.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to let folks know that there's a call with Kansas Appleseed to USD 259 on Thursday. And we're asking that anyone who has experienced hunger, food insecurity for any reason, whether it's not being able to make the food truck when it's there, or there's not enough money at the end of the week for groceries, that you join the call. And I can put that link in the chat for folks. We just are looking for people with that experience to talk to USD 259 administrators about hoping to handle part of that problem in the call. So I appreciate it.
Richard, thank you very much. Any questions for Richard? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 8, and I'll pass it back to Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Aaron. Got a few things today, so I will try to rush through these and then answer any questions about those. Glad to see you all here. Want to welcome Katie. Just appointed her. Glad to see her here at this first meeting. We had a wonderful conversation. Katie, I'll actually let you talk more about yourself before I finish, but welcome, Katie.
Okay, there we go. Well, hi, everyone, and thank you. I'm very honored to be a part of this group and the work that you're doing. I came up through the Civic Engagement Academy just through this fall, and I live over in the College Hill area, but just very excited and looking forward to the work that is done through this advisory board, and really appreciative to be here. So thank you.
Thank you for your interest. Appreciate you serving. This is a fun group. We've got a wonderful DAB. And that reminds me that Camila and I will be reaching out soon for schedules on doing our DAB refresher. So for new members, every year we go through looking at working with MAPD to look at zoning, get the full zoning code, go through that, ask all the questions that you might have. You'll get a notebook, and then for everyone who's been through it, just a refresher to remember what happens with the city and zoning and things coming like that. And we also cover CORA and COMA. And when things are safer, want to get back out and do the District 1 tour again and look at the whole district. So welcome to you, and we will be reaching out on that here pretty soon. Jump through a few things COVID-wise. I know that Nikayla wanted a health report. Haven't got that just yet, but just a quick info. We are down below 8% for the first time in a long time. So we just got to keep it up so we can continue to get that on the downtrend. Vaccine wise, we're still working through distribution, working with the county on how that's getting out. But, we are getting people vaccinated, and hopefully we'll get more supply here pretty soon. But we are working with the county and the governor's office on that. Since our last DAB meeting, I became vice mayor. So it's an honor to serve. I had to go back and check the date, but it was after the first DAB meeting of the year. So that's awesome. All the perks of the job. I get a new parking spot, get to park closer to the door. And whenever the mayor can't attend something, I will jump in and try to help out. And then we have leadership meetings. So county leadership, the chairman and pro tem, Pete Meitzner and Lacey Cruz, we meet with them once a month as leadership, mayor and vice mayor, chairman and pro tem. So we do that and look at advancing the interests of the city and working with the county on that. I think our next meeting is here in about 2 weeks. Earlier, there was a question about the cameras. Those cameras are all over the city. I will ask how many are in each district. Kind of, if we provide the location, that tells everybody where not to go. So we won't do the exact location, but I will make sure that we have the number in each district. But those are all over the city. Also, since last meeting, we have the council approved funding for a minority and women-owned business fund for District 1. It will be seated at $88,000, which isn't a whole lot, but the goal and conversations we've had with some in the private sector is adding to that and hopefully increasing that number up pretty high. Once the program rolls out, which will likely be late March, early April, individuals will be able to apply for up to $15,000. And that's on the high end. The majority of the businesses I've talked to over the years that are struggling for access to capital are really asking from anywhere from $2,000 to $7,000. So the hope is we can service as many people as possible. This is a revolving loan fund, so money will be paid back to continue to help out within the district over time. And at the moment, it's low interest, no interest. All of the details aren't worked out yet, but once we get that program finalized, I'll make sure and bring that back to you all. If you have not been down 17th Street at night, you should go by the north side of the park, McAdams Park. The new street improvements on 17th Street are amazing, and the lights are awesome. I mean, it's all lit up over there. Hopefully we can get that throughout the park. That's something I'll continue working with some private sector folks on, just talking through what it looks like to get the whole park lit up like that. But that looks really good if you haven't seen it. Those of you who are close in the area, if you do any late night driving tonight, once it's dark, might be dark now, drive by 17th Street and check that out. Pretty awesome. The city has also, working with our housing department, approved a $12 million for rent assistance, and that's past rent and future rent. So that will help folks like one gentleman who said he just got a job, but they won't let him come in for 3 weeks because of COVID. Everyone went on quarantine. So he's like, how can I pay this month's rent? This type of program will help him out because he can pay future rent as well. So we have that we're working through. kind of getting all that going. I think the program's off the ground. Sally's on here, so she can correct me if I'm wrong, but that program has been approved. I'm excited about that. That's going to help quite a few people here in the Wichita area. We have been talking with the governor's office as well about this and trying to work with them to make sure there's no duplications in service. And potentially if we run out, there's other state funding available. So my hope is that we can help as many people as possible. And I know that the need is there, and we likely will exhaust those funds this year. But if you have questions about that, reach out to our housing department, and Sally or one of our other amazing staff can help you out getting that information. University Plaza wise, just give you all another update. They are complying with about everything the city has said. There's a few other violations they're working through right now, but they have been very responsive to the city. I'll be going back to talk to residents, just to make sure I'm hearing the same from them, but they have been responsive. I get a report after every inspection to see where we're at. So they had a few challenges they needed to work through, but they are in the process of doing that right now. And I have not heard new complaints from University Plaza. So that to me is a plus, and I'm glad that they are compliant, but they still have more work to do. So I'm not saying it's over with. Today is the first day of Black History Month. I will not bug you all tonight, but I have enjoyed letting my friends in the National Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials, NBC Leo, know that 2 years prior to Greensboro was the DOCM sit-in here in Wichita. Many people still here don't know that. I talked to a class today and talked to them about it, but Wichita does have one of the first, I won't say the first, because there may be documentation somewhere else that there was one before, but this is the earliest that I've seen. And it was actually on the Today Show as well. So we've been sharing that, but I've enjoyed it. A few of them kept saying it's not true. And I say, here you go. Here's the proof. Wichita is leading that. So one cool fact on that, you heard about the new library in District 3. The council did officially vote and approve the Dr. Ronald Walters Branch Library. So excited about that. And I'm more excited for when it opens. Dr. Walters' widow, who reached out during the council meeting and the library board meeting, is interested in potentially coming for a safe grand opening when things are different and being here. So I'd love to have her here for that and just learn from everything that she has to share about her spouse's life and accomplishments. Last couple things, the Chester Lewis Reflection Park work is coming along well. Again, we are expanding that park by an additional 30 feet. The designs look really nice right now. We do have community partners helping to seek more artists. I don't know if any of you know Anthony Joyner and Elizabeth Stevenson, but they are the art consultant and they are reaching out to more artists to get involved with this project. But so far, everything I've seen looks amazing. I know that the community will be excited about it, and we're pushing to make sure it's historically accurate. What that means right now is the statue that you see is not representative of the actual DOCM sit-in. So we are making sure that people know that information and get that out there. I know there's a lot of interest in District 3. So what I know is that all the candidates that wanted to petition for that have turned in their petitions. I have not heard how many are valid just yet. But District 3's District Advisory Board will call a special meeting once they get that information. That's open to the public. So if you want to, hear those candidate interviews, you can tune in. I know I'll be tuned in, just listening to see what all of the folks say. And then after they call their special meeting and choose their top 5, that will come to the city council for an appointment. And they will get appointed that day once it comes up on the item. We will talk to all 5 of the top folks that they send over and, kind of get a feel of not only what District 3 wanted, but also who can do this job. So we will have that. Don't have a date for you on that because District 3 hasn't called that special meeting yet. And I don't think everything's been validated just yet, but it will be coming up soon. And then lastly, our ethics policy, we had a workshop on that. During the workshop, we talked about bringing this back to council February 9th. There was a lot of questions and additional research that some council members wanted to see and some other policies. And once the council gets that, it won't be approved on February 9th. It's just for us to see what the responses are to our inquiries, as well as what kind of a final draft will be. And then we are encouraging staff, so this will happen, that it goes back out to the community. So we're not just creating a policy that governs us without real public input. The public only saw the policy for a couple of days before the workshop. So we want to hear from you all as our bosses, what you think of a policy, what should it have, how should electeds here be governed? And your input is the most important that we want to hear. So that will happen. There may be more discussion about how we get that done and trying to make it an independent process and not led by us. We want to make sure that it's done right, vetted by the public, and that you all approve. So February 9th will be one date where we get some responses from all of that. And then we'll go forward from there, going back out. I specifically wanted to make sure every DAB had a chance to see it. I'd prefer not to vote on it until we have a District 3 council member. That way, there are 7 people that can look at it and approve or not. So that is all of my updates. I think I hit every point I had, and I'm happy to answer any questions about what we've talked about or anything else you might have.
Any questions?
This is going to be fun to say. Vice Mayor Johnson. So my question about the ethics policy discussion, when you mentioned it going out for public feedback, did that also include, because I tried to watch bits and pieces of the last council meeting and I didn't know if this came up. Did that also include having presentations at all of the DABs, or just kind of just the public having to look at it at their own and providing that feedback? Or was there a potential conversation of that being presented from staff to all of the actual district advisory boards as well in a more direct presentation instead of people having to look at it on their own?
Yeah, at the meeting. And so part of what I was saying, I really don't know if we should be presenting this, and that's something we're going to keep talking about. But every DAB will have an opportunity to hear it and give feedback. And in addition to that, Bob, our city manager, is working on a social media town hall. We don't know what that looks like just yet, because that can get weird with a 6-page document. So we're trying to figure out what that'll look like. But we will have every DAB as well as that social media town hall before it comes back to council, because we want to make sure everybody has an independent chance to review, give feedback, tell us if it sucks or not. Because like I brought up at the workshop, I heard quite a bit after 2019 about dinners and lunches, and this current policy really doesn't address that. So if all the folks that talk to me about that don't have their issue addressed, then, to me, what are we doing? So I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to see it and give feedback.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Vice Mayor, I know we're going to talk more about the ethics issue later, but looking through the presentation as is and understanding that there will be updates as y'all go into February, that presentation from the workshop, I'm trying to understand. I see that the chair would be selected on the current draft by the mayor with council approval. How are the other members being selected? I see the boards they're coming from. How are the other members being selected?
So that, as I understand it, would just be a random selection from those outlined boards. Those were chosen because those boards actually have a little more power here. So I guess significance maybe, but like the park board has a lot of authority. There are parks that the city council really doesn't govern. The park board does. The library board is kind of in the same way. So that would be a random selection. And the way the appointment process works as amended, because the way it's in the draft is the mayor would appoint and we would say yes or no. At the workshop, I just suggested we take a week in between, because there was some concern about the mayor making the appointment for ethics. And with that, hopefully we get someone that is recommended, that is kind of universally seen as above reproach. And then we'd have a week to really vet that. So, you know, whether that's a background check or looking into social media, whatever that might be, we'd have a week in between the nomination and the confirmation from the council.
And just so that my fellow DAB members are aware, if you don't know already, that the ethics policy will apply to all DAB members as well.
Yep.
And that's in part why we can't serve on the ethics board.
All elected and all appointees.
I have a quick question on that, because I think Tex, you bring up a really good point of how the others are selected. Do those boards have ethics policies for themselves? Or is this the ethics policy that also applies to those boards?
There is I have to go back and look. There's a policy that applies to all appointed citizen advisory boards anyway right now. This would just revise all of that into one.
Okay.
And some of that was sent during your DAB training, and it also includes COMA and CORE conversations for your current DAB members. This is Camila speaking.
Very good.
I will say, as we go forward in this conversation, to give context to my fellow DAB members, my background, I've actually worked with a number of cities in Texas, specifically around crafting ethics policies, in large part because we ran a lot of challengers to incumbents on the fact that there wasn't an ethics policy in place. And once we took charge of city councils, we suddenly were in that position where what now? And so had to do due diligence with what a lot of other cities are doing. And over the next week or two, I'm actually reaching back to some of the mayors and city council members that I worked with in the past from different cities to get their feedback on how their policies are going. And I will be happy to follow up with the board on that. And I just, in transparency, will be following up, giving feedback to our vice mayor as well, particularly around some exceptions and disclosures around gifts, around the appointment process, as well as around some clauses I saw regarding cyberbullying and some and potential disciplinary action around that, review action around that. So I'm happy to talk about that more in detail later, but that's where I'm kind of going to be focused on, and I'll probably write something up over the next few weeks, pulling some of the best practices I feel from some of the cities we worked with, which is a bit different, I think, and a bit more hopefully independent than the current suggested model would be. So hopefully that helps.
Looking forward to it.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward into new business. Item number 9. And Philip, are you with us? I see you.
I am. I had to unmute myself. Good evening. How are you guys doing tonight? Good, good. Forgot everybody's muted. Philip Zievenberg with the Wichita area, Metropolitan Area Planning Department. I've got 2 zoning cases for you tonight. The first one is PUD 2020-14. As a reminder, PUDs are custom zoning classifications. Basically, if somebody has a unique project that doesn't necessarily fit nice and neatly into one of our specific zoning classifications, they can apply for a PUD, give some flexibility within the zoning code. So not every PUD in the city is unique. If you remember, I think it was in December, I was here talking about a PUD on 16th and Vassar. So that one dealt with like apartment complexes. This one is single family residential neighborhood. So very different, just unique zoning classification. So they are requesting, it's in the Falcon Falls subdivision, which is near 45th and Hillside. It's on the north side of 45th Street. If you're not aware, it's right at the interchange where you can get off of Highway 254. Jay Russell, who's the applicant, he is looking to rezone 93 of the lots that he still owns. So this PUD is only applying to lots that the developer still owns, not to the lots that are owned by individual people who have already built homes within Falcon Falls. He's looking to rezone them from single family SF5 to this PUD classification. The PUD document itself has the governing language for the new zoning classification. And the way this one's written is restricting everything to single family as if it was still SF5. The only difference is twofold. Number one, permitting accessory apartments by right. And I'll get into these in more detail in just a second. The other one is to allow one non-resident employee if there's a home occupation. So to work kind of backwards here, addressing home occupations, single family SF5 permits a variety of home occupations right now. The types of home occupations aren't changing. The ones that are permitted within the zoning code can stay. They're still permitted in this. They're not giving any more latitude as to what people can do in terms of an approved home occupation in their home. Typical ones are officing in your home if you have your own business. Obviously, a lot of people are working from home right now. If you're working from home, that's not a home occupation necessarily. You're just officing in your house and commuting remotely. This would be like if you had your own business and you occasionally had somebody come by to partake of your service. It's not retail oriented. Somebody can, do piano lessons. They can run a daycare. They could do a massage therapy, things of that nature. There's a whole slew of other things, but that's just kind of the general ones we typically see in homes. In SF5 zoning, you're not allowed to have any non-resident employees. So if you had a daycare, it would just have to be you or anybody else who lives in your home who can run that business. This would allow one additional employee to come in and work with you. So say, for example, if somebody has their own business and they're an architect, they could have an administrative assistant or another architect come to their home and work with them. Excuse me. That's an example of what this PUD would allow. The accessory apartments, not apartment complexes. It would be one accessory apartment per lot if these people so choose. Really what Jay Russell is looking at doing, and I see that Phil Myers on here, he's the agent for the applicant on this. He's using this as a marketing strategy. This isn't the only subdivision in Wichita he's trying this in, but he's looking at, given the new world that we're living in right now, where a lot of people are working from home, or you're homeschooling your kids, or potentially you have older family members who are in nursing care facilities that are completely locked down, but you don't want that and you want to care for them in your home. These people can have their own space. And it would just happen to be having living quarters and an own separate kitchen. I know Jay would make available a floor plan that would have an apartment already built in. So you actually wouldn't even see a different building. It would just be kind of across a courtyard, kind of between the front door and the garage. But it would allow, if somebody wanted to build a small accessory structure in the backyard that happens to have living quarters in it. The ownership is under the same ownership as the lot. They can't sell it separately. It has to look, if it's separate, it has to look and have the same character as the house and the underlying neighborhood. So it doesn't have to be matchy-matchy with the primary structure, but it does have to fit within the character and the design of the homes in the neighborhood. The water and sewer have to be under the same account. So there's a lot of things in place to make sure it's not turning into some big condominium space where you have multiple owners and a whole lot of extra people living there. They're typically very small. You're looking at maybe a single person or just a couple if they were to be living in it. They're not necessarily designed to be long-term, long-term things. Anyway, so that's really the gist of it. Is the lots would basically stay single-family residential. You can't build a duplex. You can't build apartment buildings. They're just allowing 2 additional things to happen on these 93 lots that would not be able to be allowed if it stayed single-family residential. So really, these are options that any one of these 93 lots could do. It's not saying every single one of them would have an accessory apartment. It's not saying every single one of them would have a home occupation. He really doesn't know how this is going to go. He's just providing it as an option, and people can choose to have an apartment built, or for all you know, none of the 93 would actually build one. So the zoning surrounding it is all single family residential. The only difference is right at the corner of 45th and Hillside, There is some two-family zoning with some duplexes, and there's also some limited commercial zoning right on the corner as well. Otherwise, Falcon Falls is fairly well developed now. I think these might be, don't quote me on this, but they very well could be like the last 93 lots available in all of Falcon Falls. Staff is recommending approval of this. We have reviewed the language again. This is like the third subdivision that Mr. Russell is doing this with. We've been able to work through 2 other ones and kind of get some kinks worked out. The fact is, in single family residential zoning, any individual person in Falcon Falls could apply for a conditional use to build an accessory apartment. We get those every so often where somebody, usually what we hear from people is they have an aging parent that they want to be able to care for them near them, but also let them have their own space. So staff looked at this as any person within Falcon Falls could get an accessory apartment on their property. They would just have to go through the public hearing process to do so. I haven't had a long history in the planning department, but I would be, I think I'd be pretty right in saying there are probably very rare occasions where we don't permit an accessory apartment to be built. We still want it to go through the conditional use process. So we have like a site-to-site analysis of it. And really what Mr. Russell is doing is he's basically doing that public hearing process all in one for 93 lots, instead of each individual property owner having to do it by themselves. So it's not something out of the ordinary, out of the blue, that would be just totally out of the question in terms of what's allowed in single family SF5 zoning. Mr. Russell's just doing the work ahead of time to see if there would be individuals, a fraction of them wanting to do it by right instead of them having to go through the process themselves. So we are recommending approval of it. This case goes to Planning Commission on the 18th. Something to note about this case is as we were approaching what would have been the original Planning Commission date, it was discovered that not everybody within the notification ring got notified. There was an error where the title company did not include some addresses. And so we very quickly deferred it until we got a new ownership list. We verified that the new ownership list had all the correct addresses on there who needed to be notified. And we re-notified the case to all the property owners who are required to be notified. For this case, that's a 1,000-foot radius because we are talking about 34 acres. So everybody within 1,000 feet of any individual one of these lots got a notification letter. We did provide all those individuals with letters saying that the case was going to be deferred. So they have been in contact with the planning department, or I have been in contact with them, letting them know the steps of the case. So you guys get to hear it first this time. It will be going to Planning Commission on February 18th, which is 2 weeks from Thursday. And then it will go on to City Council after that. We figured we might as well keep this DAB date since it had been the original DAB date anyway, instead of pushing it to March. And oftentimes with some cases like this, the Planning Commission kind of likes to hear what the DAB had to say anyway. So our findings for our recommendation is that the zoning and the character of the neighborhood is single family. There is some 2-family nearby. Again, this is a permitted use within single family SF5. You go through a conditional use process. So it's not something that's really introducing anything new. That wouldn't be allowed by the zoning code. Obviously, these houses could just be built as single family residential the way they are. You wouldn't necessarily have to have the accessory apartments with them. But we feel like with the governing language of the PUD, restricting everything to single family, and that the fact that this is just an option and they're not going to be, purposely developing these all 93 lots with a second dwelling that's accessory, but that's going to mitigate potential negative impacts. Something that always comes up with these is what about parking? Where, if this happens, where is that employee going to park? If somebody lives in that apartment, where are they going to park? The zoning code for single family residential requires only 1 spot per dwelling. I drove around the neighborhood and took some pictures and kind of familiarized myself with the area. Most of the homes have 2 to 3 car garages. You count the spaces in the garage plus the spaces in the driveway, that's anywhere from 4 to 6 spaces per dwelling that is off street. And I know, not every family doesn't just drive 1 car. If anything, you have 2 to 3. But even with 2 to 3 cars, if somebody's, working from home, their car's probably still in the garage. There's still probably space in the driveway for an individual, another vehicle without, potentially clogging up the street with all this off-street parking. These 93 lots have yet to be developed since the subdivision was platted. Again, this is kind of a marketing thing that Mr. Russell is looking at doing for the rest of his development here. Regarding conformance to the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan identifies this area as appropriate for new residential. That encompasses the wide variety of densities that is available within residential. Obviously, we wouldn't be going for if somebody wanted to make it more dense than just accessory apartments. It's a very different story, but accessory apartments in single family residential is something the zoning code allows. And so we find it to be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. I have had quite a few phone calls with neighbors. Some of it was clearing up what exactly was going on. The original notification letters talked about ADUs and really didn't spell it out. So the second round of notification letters, I spelled out accessory apartments, made sure that there was less opportunity for confusion in the notification process. I did receive one voicemail of an individual who was actually in support of this application as well. So in general, that's kind of the overview of it. I think what might be best is if you have any questions for me. If not, Phil Meyer is with Boffman. He is the agent for the applicant working with Mr. Russell. If there's some specific questions that I'm unable to answer, I'm sure he'd be glad to chime in as well.
Any questions for staff to start off with?
Philip, on the, I was just a little confused talking about the zoning. I'm talking about the floor plans on these. Is Jay then building these where they're all going to have essentially like a place above the garage already, and then the family can decide whether they use that space or they can go ahead and rent out that space, or if they decide to use that entire space that's built, they have an option to build an accessory apartment in the back. I didn't know if that's a part of, if that option's already there with what's being built with just the home, with the standard floor plan.
That's a good question. I believe that he's going to have a floor plan option that an individual could choose to build. So they could still choose to build a single family home without an accessory apartment as part of it. So they could potentially choose a floor plan that has one built in. They could choose a floor plan without one and never even have one. This also would allow somebody, if they didn't have one built into the home, to build one either onto the home as an addition or as a separate structure in the backyard. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
I'm going to assume it does. Question for you related to the status of the other projects that were similar to this in the city. You alluded to the fact that this isn't the first. Have those already gone through, and are they being marketed and developed as such?
The first one is set to go to City Council on February 9th. That one is at 151st, or between 151st and 167th and Maple, way out by Goddard. Out of the three, that is the newest subdivision. And so that one hasn't gotten official approval yet. It didn't get a lot of, there really wasn't much opposition through that one, through the Planning Commission process. It is expected to get an approval, final action from City Council for then Jay to begin selling those types of homes when he meets with individuals who want to build in that subdivision. The other one was at Planning Commission last week, 2 weeks ago. It's down off of 33rd and Rock. It's the Rocky Ford edition across the street from the Air Force Base. So that one's still in its protest period. That one had a little bit of opposition to it. It's a little bit more developed than the first one. Still got an approval recommendation from Planning Commission. We'll see if there's any protests that happen. That doesn't end until Thursday. And then it will be going to City Council probably in the next 3 weeks. So that one goes to DAB on Wednesday. And so I don't have an opinion as to what the DAB recommendation would be to City Council. Of course, that's District 2, so that's not going to DAB until Monday. I apologize, that's not District 3, that's District 2. Anyway, so that's the status of those. Again, they're all Mr. Russell's. He did the one way out west first, kind of got that one where we massaged some of the PUD language. And once we got that figured out, then he submitted these other two at the same time.
Very good. You mentioned that you had received at least one resident comment, and I think you said that that was actually in favor. Was that the only one?
Yes, I've only received one person who took the time to actually say they're in favor of it. It's fairly typical that if somebody's in favor of it, they may not take the opportunity to let you know. It's rather odd, and when they do, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've gotten a support letter from something. And I did have several, like I said, several conversations, and we did receive several comments in writing from individuals who are concerned about what could possibly happen in Falcon Falls if this goes through.
Thank you. This is Camila. Can I interrupt real quick and see? We have two hands up. One for surely I know is a DAB member. I don't think the other one is. So after all the DAB members have their questions or concerns to Philip, then we'll go out to the public. So we do acknowledge your hands up. And if someone could go check Facebook, that'd be appreciated.
Very good with the thumbs up. To Don?
Okay, so I was reading in the PUD specifications. I had a question about it mentioning the traffic study, and the reason I'm asking is because our youth member, him and his family live in the area, and they're not for this based off of not a traffic issue. They feel like it's going to be a traffic issue when you put so many dwellings in that area. And so my question is about a traffic study. Did anything warrant a traffic study for this particular case? And what would warrant one if you were to do one?
This one did not warrant a traffic study. I don't necessarily know what the threshold is, but for an example, the one out west on Maple, they were rezoning 294 lots, and that one didn't warrant a traffic study either. So this one's 93. That one, again, was rezoning almost 3 times, about 2.5 times more in that subdivision. And through that process, as Planning Commission weighed in on it and had discussion, there was talk about traffic and even the access in and out of the subdivision. And based on the subdivision regulations and things like that, that one didn't warrant anything more because it still met fire code. And it had 294 lots.
Okay, so there were bigger developments then.
Yep.
Okay. My next question is just more out of curiosity, because you guys mentioned TF3 as a reference somewhere in here for the non-residential employee, I believe. So I was curious as to why that they didn't take that direction. Just doing a TF3 model. Is it just because they wanted to do it all in one fell swoop instead of individually?
Well, they could have requested TF3 zoning, but that would permit you doing duplexes, and duplexes can be split and you can have separate owners of the duplexes. That one basically more than likely guarantees renters. I can't say guarantees, but there's a higher likelihood that when you have duplexes development, that there's going to be more likely than not probably a rental situation.
Yeah.
This one, the accessory apartment, again, can be built within the home, so you actually don't even notice there's a second dwelling there. It is significantly smaller. And it's the purpose of like an accessory apartment is really to accessory to the main dwelling, where it's the purpose of it is, you know, overshadowed by the fact that there's a main home there. Like it's really meant to have something that's an extension of the family, like a mother-in-law suite or something like that. And again, Mr. Russell is looking to really market this as like, hey, this is your place to have your home office, or this is a place where you can take your kids across the courtyard and homeschool them, or even just a man cave to get around the house because get out of the house because we're all, you know, shut in a lot more than we used to. Doesn't mean it couldn't be used for other things, but that's kind of his vision.
No, okay. Yeah, I was thinking more of a, with the exception of the duplexes, because I understand that point. That would be more aggressive. But no, that's good explanation. Thank you.
Hey, Philip, just to go ahead and follow along that discussion, based off of your experience, research, any studies, is there any reason to believe that this type of a change would actually result in any significantly higher amounts of traffic?
No, because again, all of these are options. There's really nothing out there that can give you a good statistic to go off of. But as an example, in the last 2 years, we've had 5 conditional use requests per year for an accessory apartment in a single family residential neighborhood. So if you take, you know, considering, you know, we do 60, well, we did 40 conditional use requests last year, 41. And so when you take kind of that proportion of what we've kind of seen on trend of just how many people are actually going the extra mile to get an accessory apartment, it's not very high. So again, these are just options. It's not like Mr. Russell's going to be building these houses as spec homes and selling them. You know, he still is selling the lot to somebody. That person's picks out their floor plan, they built their home. Yes, he will be marketing this as something they can do. And even in regards to the home occupation, the number of people who have home occupations in Wichita, like we don't have a hard and fast number. They have to be licensed through the city to have a licensed home occupation. I don't have those numbers offhand, but again, to have options, when you think of 93 lots, you're looking at maybe 1 in 10, 1 in 15 doing one or the other. So when it comes to our concern of an increase in traffic or increase in density, really the numbers, what numbers we have just really don't show that it's really going to be that likely.
Good. So at this point in time, I'm going to go out to the applicant, please. Phil, can you give us a little explanation?
Certainly glad to. And I think Philip did an absolutely great job of presenting this. So I'm going to be very brief and then answer any questions. I think one of the confusing things about the application is our zoning code and the fact that we are using the word accessory apartment. So the first thing you think of is this is a rental, and these will not be rentals. So Jay's doing 2 things with the covenants for Falcon Falls when we do this. One, he's writing in there, you cannot rent out this accessory apartment. And 2, it will have a maximum of 600 square feet or 25 by 24. These are casitas is what he calls them. And the best way to describe it to you is it's a mother-in-law house. But after COVID happened, for people that are working at home, it was a place they could maybe escape, walk across the courtyard and work. If you're homeschooling, if you have a relative that needs to move in with you, if you have college kids that were home during this, and many college kids will start to do more online, it's a place for them to have their own place. I don't think there's any increased traffic to this, because today, if you're moving your mother-in-law in the house, you're putting her in the house, either in one of the bedrooms or downstairs or something. So to just give her a little more privacy, you'll have the same amount of traffic that flows in and out of these casitas as you did before. So that zoning term of accessory apartment just immediately makes you think it's going to be a rental, but that will be prohibited through the restrictive covenants for the homeowners association. With that, I will answer any questions that DAB members may have of me.
Any questions for Phil from the DAB? All right, with that, I'm going to take it out to the public. So forgive me, I'm not sure exactly who AMD is, but you've got the floor.
Hi, that's me. Sorry, I wasn't anticipating talking. This is something that just showed up on the Facebook HOA here in the last few hours, and my wife had sent it to me and asked if I could just go listen in. Now that I hear what's going on, appreciate what you guys are doing. Didn't even know you existed. I would say, so generally speaking, the neighborhood is not in favor of this, I think, for some of the reasons that are outlined by the previous speakers, Philip and Phil. And I think most of it has to do with not understanding what was permitted. But I also wanted to mention that the way that the language is written, everybody in the neighborhood trusts Jay. Jay does a really good job. He's a good developer. But this ability to add a mother-in-law house, nothing in the future prevents somebody from changing the look and feel of the neighborhood, once Jay Russell is gone. So I guess my question is, if there are, I know that there's a lot of people that are not in favor via Facebook and via just conversations I've had with my neighbors. What is the process to, I guess, protest was something that was brought up. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll get to that. Can we get your name and address?
Yeah, Andrew Dahl, 2817 East Maintain Court.
Thank you. Yeah, so the protest, that period is the 2 weeks immediately following the Planning Commission meeting. So if you recall, when I was presenting,
18th.
it was a Planning Commission on February 18th. So starting on February 19th through the next 14 full days. So you have until March 5 p.m. Anyone can submit a protest petition to the city clerk. And though the notification radius was 1,000 feet, for protest purposes, the state statutes limit it to 200 feet. And really what it is it doesn't stop the case, but it could cause the city council to have a higher vote requirement to approve it. So if 20% of the land area within 200 feet of these lots protests it, when it goes to city council, in order to approve it, city council will need 6 of 7 votes. Should there be an actual District 3 council person there, but basically it's a 3/4 majority. They still do the fraction, so it's probably at least 5 votes to approve it. So again, protests don't necessarily, they're not a veto. They just, it's a way for the council to hear your voice in a sense, because we give them that map, we show them the properties that protested the case, and it kind of is a way to communicate to the council what the will of the neighborhood is. And then again, it causes the city council to need a higher vote if that 20% threshold is met.
So in this case, it would be 20% of the local neighborhood would have to file a complaint.
Of the land area within 200 feet surrounding these properties. So when we get them in, we draw a radius around the properties and we calculate the land area of the properties that protested. And if that land area is 20% of the overall protest area, then that threshold is met.
Thank you. Apologize for the child's noise. Last question, where can I find the recording of this?
The recording of the DAB meeting?
This meeting, yes.
I'll let Camila answer that question.
Hi, sir. Camille Alexander. I support Councilmember Johnson for District 1, and this is live on Facebook under Wichita District 1. And you do not need a Facebook account to view this. You can go to facebook.com and just type in Wichita District 1. And if you check the chat, I'll put my name and email for further questions, and I can help send protest petitions if you can't contact Phil.
Sounds good. Thank you all.
I had a question for, is it Mr. Duell talking to his neighbors, just to clarify for the DAB. The issue, the concern again, was not necessarily having that accessory apartment for the uses put forward. It is around that accessory apartment being changed for its use down the road, or look appearance might change down the road. I just wanted to clarify, Philip, it sounded like you were saying it can't be designed and even updated anyway down the road to reflect like a different household, correct?
Right. It has to stay under the same ownership of whoever owns the primary lot, and the accessory apartment at all times needs to look and feel like the character of the neighborhood. So you can take elements of the house that is on the lot or even houses nearby, but it has to have the same look and feel. Those restrictions are written into the zoning code. Those restrictions are written into this PUD. So everything that governs accessory apartments as it stands right now, if somebody had done a conditional use, applies in this case as well. And so, and if it's written into the restrictive covenants that they can't be rentals, then it would take changing the restrictive covenants in order to allow rental in the future. And that's that private agreement that's binding within your community. That's separate from the city. We don't enforce covenants. But if it comes out, that's, you find out sometime in the future that somebody's actually renting them out, that's something you take up with your HOA board, if those covenants are written that way.
As far as the appearances down the road, if the appearance is changed up as, and Andrew, feel free to clarify if that's what was some of the concern. If that comes up down the road, those neighbors have recourse then to file a complaint separate from this process as well, correct?
Yes, they could file a complaint with the zoning inspection office. We have individuals who receive those complaints and investigate it, and if they find something with that accessory apartment is not up to par with what the PUD or the zoning code states, then they will issue a citation and needs to be rectified.
Thank you, Philip. And I appreciate you giving us feedback, Andrew. It's really helpful for us.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Philip, real quick, just on the clarification on the protest for Andrew, can you talk about how that should be done? Isn't that in writing? What's the best way?
Yeah, so we've got a standard protest petition form that I can put my contact information in the chat as well, or I know Camila has a copy of it as well, but it's something that I can email it to you. You can find it on our planning website, which is wichita.gov/planning. Go down to the middle of the page and click on the applications button, and there's a whole page with different PDFs, and the protest petition is in there as well. Probably best for me to just email it to you. That's a standard form. You don't have to use that form. You literally could just put your name and address and, a written protest to the case. It's easier for the clerk's office to recognize our standard form as a written protest. So that's something that I would recommend using.
Can I chime in and add on to that, Philip? The current protest form does ask for your legal lot name. And so between Philip and me, we're able to look on our GIS map system, like your lot number 5 in addition 4 of Falcon Point. You have to have that in addition to your regular home address. So again, we're city staff here to help anyone with any protest petition.
Thanks, Camila. Looks like there's a hand up that's identified as iPhone. You've got the conch.
We'll just give them a minute to unmute. If you guys want to go check the chat and save information, you have my contact.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, I was muted. I didn't realize I didn't unmute. The accessory apartments, you said they can be attached or detached, correct?
Yes, can you tell us your name, ma'am? This is Camila, but tell the group your name.
Yes, my name is Jewel Moncure. Okay, I said that is the accessory apartments you said could be attached or detached, correct?
That is correct. They can be a part of the main structure, or they can be their own separate structure in the backyard. If they're a structure, they do have to abide by the setback regulations that are in the zoning code for accessory structures. And any water or sewer utilities have to remain under their same account as the main house.
Right. And the persons that stay in those apartments, they do not have to be a member of the family, a non-family member, correct? They can be a non-family member.
They can be a non-family member. What governs, if you're kind of lending towards rentals, that's governed by the covenants. And as Phil Myers stated, it sounds like Jay Russell's working to have the covenants amended, or maybe they are now to prohibit rentals. So they can be a non-member as long as they're not renting. There's nothing that's going to force them to be a member of the family. The covenant, if the covenants say you can't have rentals, you know, it doesn't bar anybody from just letting somebody live there. They just can't be charging them rent. They just can't rent it.
Correct. Now, right now, we are at SF5, a single family community, and you're asking us to change to a PUD to allow these accessory units. And anyone, you said there's going to only be a few people who would want this. Why are we going to change our zoning to a PUD to accommodate just for a few, when these people can get a conditional use permit to put up whatever they want to do, just like we would have to do? So that's what I just think we're taking this too far. You're changing our whole community from single family to a PUD. And once your zoning has been changed, it does not go back to the single family. You have totally changed our community.
As a correction, it is only changing the zoning of 93 lots. It's not changing the zoning of all of Falcon Falls. So that's a clarification I want to put to the DAB board. And number two, Mr. Russell, within his rights, have the ability to request a zone change for the property that he owns. He's a developer. He wants to build and sell homes. And he sees this as a marketing tool, given a new world we're kind of living in. And so he has the opportunity to request a zone change that provides potentially a little bit different option out there in the Wichita housing market. And yes, even if it's just a few or nobody, he has the right as a property owner to request this for these 93 lots. And even if 5 people take advantage of it, he basically is using that as his edge to say, I've done this work for you. You don't have to do it as an individual person. Come buy a lot from me and I can build, we can work on building you a house that has this as part of it, instead of you having to do all the work on your own. So regardless of everybody doing it or nobody doing it, the fact of the matter is Mr. Russell has the ability to ask. And this is why we go through the public hearing process. And that's kind of where that lands.
Okay, and that's well and good. But my next concern is, once he has this 93 properties under the PUD, he later on could amend this PUD. He cannot, it has to remain as it is, the PUD for the accessory unit. He cannot do anything different to come in for a multi-family.
The moment any lot is sold away from him and is no longer in his ownership, he is not able to change anything on those lots. And even if he retains all 93 and nobody buys any of them, once the current PUD, whatever language is approved by city council, if it's approved, becomes binding. And the only way to change that is to amend the PUD. And that's another public hearing process where there's a new notification of it. It goes before the DAB, it goes before Planning Commission, and it goes to city council for final approval. So it's not all of a sudden this blanket zoning classification that is flexible, that can have any changes at any point in time without anybody knowing. What's written in the PUD becomes binding as if it's its own zoning classification. And from then on forward, any changes have to be done by an amendment process. Once lots start being sold away, the ability to change all 93 at the same time becomes very hard, because the moment Mr. Russell does not own them, he no longer can do anything on those lots because he does not own them. You can't request a zone change for somebody else's property. And so each individual property owner can request something for their lot, just like ones who have the single family residential lot But in terms of the 93 lots as a whole, doing something altogether, becoming this amorphous mass that changes all the time, really almost becomes impossible, because as people buy individual lots, they would have to come together as one unit and put in, an application to have the same changes on their lots. You would be looking at an individual person doing a one-off if they ever did. And again, all of those would have to come through a public hearing process.
Right, and I understand that. And once he has developed whatever number of his 93 lots, and somewhere down the road, the lots that are remaining, he can amend and do whatever he wants in the amendment, whether it be multifamily or whatever he wants to do with the remaining lots, not the ones that have been sold, I know.
Yes, he could request an amendment. Whether or not he can do whatever he wants is not really an accurate statement. It still comes through the public hearing process. So the application would come through the planning department. If he were to come through and say, you know what, I want MF18 and allow 18 dwelling units per acre on these 93 lots, planning staff would immediately say, we're going to recommend denial of your case, because in the middle of a single family residential neighborhood is not an appropriate place for higher densities like multifamily units like MF18, MF29, or B multifamily. So to say it becomes this wide open door to allow, apartment complexes or anything like that is not an accurate statement. There's still the professional planning that goes into this, where we look at it as professional and say, what is good for a single family residential neighborhood? And, accessory apartments, they can be permitted by conditional use. We feel that's an appropriate thing to allow. You start getting higher densities than that, it's not going to happen.
So we could be guaranteed that nothing beyond accessory apartments would be approved for our community.
I'm not going to guarantee anything, but to say all of a sudden everything is going to change on those 93 lots in the future, and it's just going to be this thing that starts eroding the character of the neighborhood, very unlikely. Again, in order to change multiple lots at the same time, every single property owner would have to come together and agree on the same thing and sign the same application to do it all to affect their own individual properties. It'd just be like, Ms. Jewel, I know you and I have spoken throughout this process. You live in Falcon Falls. It'd just be like you as an individual property owner coming to the planning department to request a zone change that we'd feel would be inappropriate. So, you're looking at this block of 93 lots and you think, well, that block could just magically change overnight and become something completely different, is highly unlikely. Not to mention, as people start building their homes, if you start looking at doing other types of higher density residential developments, you're looking at somebody taking on the cost of raising those structures in order to rebuild something. So again, a PUD is just another zoning classification like SF5. It just provides flexibility in how you write the rules. Once the rules are written, they're written, and it takes quite a bit of process to actually change them. As the time goes on, what you'll probably see is the fact that you have single family homes in a single family neighborhood, and every so often somebody has another dwelling, whether inside or outside, that they're housing somebody that they care for.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good questions. Are there any other questions from the community? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the DAB. And is there any discussion within the DAB?
I have one more question for you, Philip. And this is a dumb question, so I apologize that I'm going to ask it. But I know that we talked that, right, it's 93 individual plots, but can 2 of these plots be combined to make a bigger one? And if so, do the rules, as far as like, 'cause I'm trying to read through the sections that talk about like the 10% and stuff like that, do those, if for some reason, I guess first question is, can 2 plots be combined to make a bigger plot?
If somebody were to buy 2 lots to give themselves more space and build one house on it, they could.
So then second question, yes. Do the percentages double, or is it for, like, I think I'm looking at like, and this is right, the garage one says 50% of ground level. that can't like double just because they purchased 2 plots, can they, or did it remain?
I think you've got our staff reports mixed up. The design guidelines you're looking at are for the zoning case for duplexes.
Gosh, yes, I do. Sorry. Never mind.
That's okay. Yeah, but to answer your first question, if somebody wanted to, they could buy 2 lots and build a bigger home. But still, those lots become a zoning lot. So it really becomes one just larger lot, even though they bought 2 legal lots. And still only 1 home with 1 accessory apartment could be built. They would just have a bigger yard. Or a bigger house and a bigger yard.
But they can still only have 1 accessory apartment.
Correct.
Okay.
Hi, you guys. I'd like to come in and acknowledge that our youth member Ruben is on the call. And Ruben, as a quick summary, I want to share 2 things that you may have missed on the phone call. If this zoning case goes through, the person who adds an accessory apartment cannot rent it out, but they could allow for someone else to live in it, like mother-in-law or college students, or your work from home office and have like your secretary come over and work there. So we talked about concerns of traffic too, Ruben. It did not, the zoning case did not trigger a traffic study because Philip, you have to help me out on this one. The number of parking spots per house is already at its kind of, I would say, maximum. It's only 1 car allotted per house when a house is built, right, Philip?
The parking requirement for a single family dwelling is only 1 space. And as these homes are being built, they're generally being built with 4 to 6 times as many parking spaces as they need, since they have 2 to 3 car garages.
Thank you. So Ruben, if you have any additional questions, want to chime in, this is your time, sir.
Okay. I was just when I reached out to you about the traffic concern, I was I know like 45th Street, before you get to the intersection is just 2 lanes. Same with Hillside, before you get to the intersection, it's just 2 lanes. And I know like in the afternoons when people are coming back from work and coming back from school, it gets so backed up because everyone's trying to go to the same place. And so I don't know, that might be more of a like street planning commission, whatever thing, like we need to widen these roads. This might not be something that we can address here, but
That's a good point, and we'll duly note that.
Okay. Any other discussion within the DAB? Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we actually approve. Is there a second?
This is Danielle.
I'll
I
second.
second.
Hit it, Danielle.
I second.
You okay? Sorry. Very good. All right. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to a vote. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand if you're on video.
Just go by names. So I see Nikayla approved, Aaron approved, Tex approved, Sadon approved, Katie approved. Luana, say yay or nay? Or
Nay.
okay. Luana disapproved. Seth approved.
Approved.
Gabe approved. If you can shake your head, I can see you. And Danielle was part of the second. Jamie, can you either unmute or vote in the chat?
Yay.
Okay, so I have 8 yays, one nay. It passes through that.
Fantastic. Lots of good discussion there. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 10. Phil, do you have this one too?
Yes, I do. This one is a zone change from single family SF5 to TF3 two-family, which would allow duplexes. It's located at 17th and Madison. It's on the west side of Madison, just north of 17th Street. There are was technically 4 platted lots, it's 2 tax parcels. So basically there used to be 2 homes there. They've been vacant and overgrown for probably decades. If you actually drive by that, there's more trees and shrubs than anything else. They're looking to rezone both of those to TF3 for two-family for duplexes. The Unified Zoning Code requires a minimum of 6,000 square feet per lot for a duplex in TF3 zoning. And those lots, when you look at just the individual tax parcels, they are about 6,500 square feet. So they exceed the minimum lot requirement. So there's enough space to put a duplex in there and meet all the setback standards. The setback standards for TF3 zoning is a 25-foot front setback, a 20-foot rear setback, and 6-foot interior side setbacks. And so that's 6 feet on either side from the house to the property line. The establishment is in the established central area, which is the urban infill strategy for the city of Wichita. It's what the Places for People plan looks at. And we've had several rezoning cases from SF5 to TF3 in the ECA. And even just in 2020, there's been a precedent set that there's design guidelines called for in the Places for People plan. And initially we were going to be looking at those as options and maybe not necessarily at every case, but as different zonings have come through and we've talked with those that have been opposed, neighbors coming through and not wanting duplexes, really what their concern is what I affectionately call the snout house. It's where you see only a garage and then there's like a little door off to the side and the entire house is behind the house. The design guidelines in the Places for People plan are aimed to address not having snout houses where the prominent feature on the front is a garage extending, way in front of the rest of the house. And so because of the history of these other cases in the ECA, where the Planning Commission and the City Council have approved the zone change with those design guidelines, we are really just writing it in as part of our approval recommendation is to add the protective overlay, which includes those design guidelines for this project as well, just becoming more consistent. If this is what's going to be going on in the ECA, then we really can't pick and choose which neighborhood gets the good design guidelines and which ones don't. That's really the gist of the background. The comprehensive plan identifies the area as residential. The Places for People plan identifies it as an area of opportunity, which it defines as a place that needs strategic investment, both with public and private, for redefining, reinvigorating the area. As I mentioned before, the lots are actually vacant and overgrown right now. And so when you think of the ability of somebody coming in and cleaning up those lots and actually building houses in there, that's something that definitely aligns with what the Places for People plan is looking to do. So staff is recommending approval. Like I said, we have the protective overlay on there, which has the design guidelines. Very quickly, the garage face can't occupy more than 50% of the ground level facade facing the streets. There needs to be a pedestrian entry scale. That's a prominent feature on the front elevation. We've seen duplexes before where literally up front, you just have a garage and they put the entry door on the side of the house. And so we want there to be actually like a fairly prominent pedestrian feature on the front that actually has the front door. Architectural variety, basically saying like if you're going to have, this one, they're proposing 2 duplexes, 1 on each thing, of basically not making them just so bland and negatively cookie cutter. The way we handle this is through the approval process. They'll need to be submitting elevation plans with their site plan for us to review and approve. We have windows and transparency, basically saying 10% of the facade must be transparent. So we want some sort of, transparency, not just all siding or brick or whatever. Having, an appealing roof design, appropriate siding materials that are traditional and consistent with the neighborhood, and having HVAC units being located away from the front of the buildings and screened from public view. Just again, some of that aesthetic to the area. And then the second point of the productive overlay is that the parking area shall not cover more than 50% of the front yard, and any trash dumpsters cannot be permitted in the front of the building. And again, a site plan shall be approved by the director of planning before the issuance of building permits. So even if the zoning goes through, there's still that second step where they have to provide plans to the planning department for us to review, so that we can review that they meet these design guidelines before they get their building permit and move forward. Our findings for our recommendation: the zoning and the character of the neighborhood. It's a mixture of single family and TF3 zoning. All of the houses right now that are built are single family homes, even though there's TF3 zoning across the street. The property is presently zoned single family residential, and they could build single family homes on each one of these lots. Even if they get TF3 zoning, if somehow they can't achieve the design guidelines or something like that, that doesn't mean they're done. They could potentially look to just build a single family home instead. TF3 zoning doesn't prohibit single family design or residential. It just allows duplex residential on top of it. We feel that with TF3 zoning, with the provisions of the protective overlay, it would minimize most of the significant visual impacts that we've been seeing in duplex development throughout the city, and that's kind of why we've been putting them in place. I talked about the conformance of the comprehensive plan. This was at Planning Commission on the 21st, and it had an approval recommendation of 11-0. Haven't heard a word from anybody in opposition. There was nobody who spoke at the Planning Commission meeting. It sat down before you tonight, and its protest period ends on Thursday, and it will go on to City Council after that. I can stand for any questions you have for me.
Anybody have any questions? Any questions from the community? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the DAB.
This is Gabriel. I move to approve.
Second. All those in favor, raise your hand, please.
I'm unmuting to say, and I'm gonna go in order of my screen again. This is item number 10. So yay for Michaela, yay Aaron Mays, yes to Don, yes Katie, yes Gabe, yes Lawanda, yes Seth, yes Tex, yes Jamie, Danielle, and 0. Ruben, what do you think?
I think it's fine.
Alrighty, so that is 10-0 from adult DAB members, and youth DAB member says go for it.
Woo. Very good. Quick and painless. Moving on to item
guys.
Can I unmute real quick? I'll unmute it real quick to say, Philip, thanks for the great explanation of the facade and the site approval plan and architectural plan, and explaining about the garage scenario, because that is something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, seeing those large garages, and the fact that what I heard is the house basically has to have a two-tone effect, not all brick, not all siding. And so, thanks for explaining that in great detail.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Like I said, that's something that we've just been seeing in other neighborhoods where there've been rezoning to two-family. What we've been seeing is when there's vacant lots in the center of the city, if somebody's going to be developing it, the cost of construction is, my guess is it's not much more to build a duplex, and they get, twice the dwelling units on one lot. And so it makes sense economically the why they pursue TF3. But as I'm sure all of you have seen, generally when duplexes go up, they just become these row of garage doors. And I don't know if you guys have driven in this part, but it's actually really cool to drive around this neighborhood. You have these single family homes where like there's just predominant nice features on the front. You know, some of them have a single car garage, some of them don't have garages at all. But to just pack garages and just front garage doors in there would actually really be very detracting from the existing aesthetic of the neighborhood.
Is that, did you say that is something that MAPD is working on for like a general rule for all zoning?
Not for all zoning, no. The Places for People plan was adopted, and we are currently working through the details of getting what was adopted in the Places for People plan codified into our zoning code. But even though it's not in our zoning code, the fact that the plan was adopted, that gives us the teeth to put these type of recommendations together in our staff reports to say, even though it's not said when you do duplex development, you have to do it this way. It's the fact that there's an adopted plan that we can go back to say, well, this is what council approved for the infill strategy. We can then do kind of a site specific, and there's still the leeway, like should the applicant, you know, even through the planning commission process, if they didn't like the design guidelines, the planning commission could have whittled them down and said, well, you don't have to do this one, you don't have to do that one. Potentially that's even technically up to the authority of the city council if they wanted to, if somebody had a problem with it. So like, it's not something that's binding for everything, and maybe each site's not always going to look the same. But we have just found this seems to be the biggest thing, is when somebody's coming in to build new homes or new duplexes within an established neighborhood, they do not want what they've been seeing. And so
how does that work for lots that are already zoned to have a duplex?
Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that.
It has to be
for a duplex. They can just get a building permit because they're already in compliance. So we can't get them all, but we can try to get some.
Yeah.
Conversation. We're going to go ahead and move along to item number 11. Sally, you've been waiting a long time. Thank you very much for your patience. Philip, I'll hand it over to you though.
Bill, thank you very much. First, I want to thank you for having us here today to present for you our third year annual action plan for our entitlement funding. With 4 DABs going on at the same time, my staff, we had to divide and conquer. So you guys got me tonight. Thank you so much for having me. So Camille, you want to move on? Who's going to move on the slideshow?
It's me, and I made you co-host just in case. I don't know if you can advance,
Okay.
or not, but I
don't know.
If I'll just put it up in presenting view, and
Yeah, it won't let me.
I got you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the city receives an annual allocation of funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development in 3 different categories. They fund activities that align with the city's goals of creating a livable and sustainable community. And we use them to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and affordable housing. Next. Sorry.
Let me go. There we go.
Okay, so those 3 types of funds come in through the Community Development Block Grant Program. This is our most flexible form of funding that can do, I believe there's 101 eligible uses for CDBG, but those funds are used to do community development activities, housing, address urgent needs in communities. We also receive, and last year we received just under $3 million in Community Development Block Grant. We also received just over $1.5 million in home investment partnership funds. These are a little different than CDBG in that these are very specifically used for the creation or development of affordable housing units. That can be done for affordable rental programs. It can be affordable home ownership, down payment assistance, but it absolutely has to be used for the development of affordable housing units. And then the last funding is the Emergency Solutions Grant. And that funding is very specific and must be used to address homelessness. And we received just under $250,000. These are in our regular allocations. You can go ahead. So as far as the planning process for these types of funds, we go through a 5-year consolidated plan process. That's a very involved, very community engaged process. It takes us about a year to create a 5-year plan. And in that 5-year plan, we set goals to achieve with these 3 different sources of funds. But then each year we create an annual action plan, which really defines what activities we're going to entail in that next year and the amount of funding that we're going to put towards it. And then this is the 3rd program year of our 5-year consolidated plan that runs from 2019 to 2023. And the funds that we're allocating in this annual action plan will run from the period of July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. So we're always working pretty far in the future. This year, though, in 2020, we received substantial additional funding due to the CARES Act in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we received just over $3.6 million in CDBG CARES funding and about $3.3 million in ESG CARES Act funding. And what's interesting is, like I said before, these programs have very specific uses and purposes. The money we received under the CARES Act, not only did it need to meet the requirements of the funding source, like CDBG or ESG has to be used for homelessness, it also had to prepare, respond, or prevent the spread of coronavirus. So we spent the greater part of 2020 deploying this additional funding throughout the community. Go ahead. So our timeline, and like I said, the planning process for a consolidated plan takes us about a year. It takes about 6 months for us to pull together the annual action plan. So during November through February, we gather public input, we develop the annual action plan. We put out a request for proposals for agencies seeking funding in designated categories. We appoint a grants review committee as part of our citizen participation plan that reviews proposals and makes funding recommendations. And then we develop a preliminary action plan that's presented to the City Council for approval. Next slide, please. In March and April, we'll be opening and closing a 30-day public comment period for this plan. And in May, we take it to the council for their final approval, and it's due to HUD no later than May 15th, 2021 for the programs to begin July 1st. So pretty lengthy timeline. As I stated before, CDBG is our most flexible form of funding, and it can be used for economic development, public facilities and improvements, affordable housing, and public services. In order to be an eligible activity, anything we fund with Community Development Block Grant must meet what they call a national objective. And that means it either has to benefit low-mod income households, prevent slum and blight, or address an urgent community need. And as I said, there's about, I think last time I checked, 101 eligible uses for CDBG, and we do maybe 10 or 12 of them in our community. But not less than 70% of the money that we receive for CDBG must be used in the category of benefiting low and moderate income persons. Go ahead. As far as the amount that we can spend on public services, we have an exception cap and it's a specific dollar amount. We can spend no more than $1,163,310 for what we call public services or human services funding. Most jurisdictions are limited to 15% of their CDBG allocation. So if we're just about $3 million, 15% would be about $450,000 that we could spend by funding agencies that provide public services. But the city years ago submitted for an exception to allow for a higher amount to be spent on public services, and that carries through to today. The funds can only be used based on a memorandum of understanding with other city departments or through an RFP for contractual services with private vendors or nonprofit community. The funds cannot be allocated for a specific provider or for an ineligible purpose. So when we put out an RFP, we obviously are very specific on the type of service or activity we're looking for. We have to make sure it's an eligible purpose, and it can't be for a specific provider. They have to go through an RFP process. So some typical projects that we funded is we do infrastructure improvements in low to moderate income neighborhoods and opportunity zones. Just this past year, we did a drainage improvement program in the Rock Block neighborhood to improve some flooding that was happening there, just as an example. We've done park improvements to low mod income neighborhoods. We're launching March 1st our facade improvement program, and this is for businesses that are in low moderate income neighborhoods and serving low moderate income families to be able to do improvements to the facades of their buildings. We did spend a significant amount of our CDBG funds in the home repair program. So for low to moderate income homeowners to be able to do repairs to their homes, oftentimes ADA repairs, critical needs such as roof replacements or HVAC replacements. And then we also fund some demolition of blighted properties through the Metropolitan Area Building and Community Development Department, so that they're the ones after condemnation. We actually fund some of the demolition so that a very dangerous property can be removed, and then that property hopefully improved in the future. Okay. We also funded the Neighborhood Resource Center. So the Atwater Center is funded through CDBG and Public Services. We fund the Housing First Project Coordinator, so that's a homeless service program funded by both the city and the county with general funds, but we use a little bit of CDBG for the coordination of that program. We fund domestic violence shelter services, youth crime prevention and enrichment programs, and training and employment through the Way to Work youth employment program. So very wide variety of activities going on in that category. The Home Investment Partnership Program, again, is always about building or creating affordable housing units. We can move forward on that one. So we typically fund home ownership activities. So we do have a down payment assistance program. We fund housing development and redevelopment activities through generally our nonprofit affordable housing partners, such as Habitat for Humanity and Mennonite Housing. We have a set aside for housing development through community housing development organizations. Those are nonprofits that meet a specific definition that's on the next slide. And we provide them some support funding for that activity and some administration. So the staff issues applications through the RFP for those community housing development organizations set aside funding, and it must be used for the development of affordable housing. In order to technically be a community housing development organization, an organization has to have legal and tax exempt status. They have to have financial capacity and experience, not just building housing, but within the community. They also, this is what ties them up. So like for Habitat for Humanity is not a CHODO, a community housing development organization, even though they're one of our strongest nonprofit affordable housing developers, because they lack the community representation on their board. And it's just the way that a lot of Habitat for Humanity boards are structured, that they don't meet the requirements. They also have to have lack of for-profit or public control, and the overall purpose of the nonprofit needs to be the development of affordable housing. That being said, you don't want another organization that happens to be a nonprofit say, oh, I can jump into the affordable housing development world, even though that's not really the mission of that organization. So that's part of that reason. And those requirements are not set by us, they are set by the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
I think this would be a good time. Could you give an example of a local CHODO?
Sure, so Power CDC, Mennonite Housing, and Jacob's Ladder are our 3 certified CHODOs in our community at this time. We have seen some interest from other parties wanting to enter into this space, but they were lacking capacity at the time. And some of the recommendation was to partner with an existing, we call them CHODOs, to get them the experience that they need to fall into this category. So right now it's Mennonite, Jacob's Ladder, and Power CDC. But there's room for more. We love affordable housing developers, especially nonprofits. Emergency Solutions Grant, again, the funding for this must be used to address homelessness. Of the funding we receive, we can only spend up to 60% in homeless assistance. So that could be outreach, shelter services, transportation, identification, things like that to address the individual who is experiencing homelessness. The remaining is spent then on homeless prevention, which is like eviction prevention, and rapid rehousing, which is a form of rent assistance that's meant to take someone who's just entered into homelessness or has the capacity to quickly exit homelessness, like source of income, to give them short-term rental assistance to get them out of being homeless. And then the administration of the Homeless Management Information System are the eligible activities for ESG. We do fund most of the shelters in the community. So shelter operations, their essential services. Sometimes if they need rehabilitation on their building, we can use ESG funds for that too. Again, homeless prevention, rent and utilities assistance for those in immediate danger of homelessness. This has been kind of interesting this year because to qualify to use ESG funds for homeless prevention, there must be an eviction order. And there's been an eviction moratorium since March of 2020 that has now just been extended through the end of March of 2021. So we have funding in this category, but have not been able to spend it at this time. Kind of funny, kind of strange. All right. So at this point, the purpose for this meeting is really just seeking feedback from the DAB or in the community as to what should be funded more or less, more if the allocation increases or less if it decreases. What does the community feel are the highest priority programs that are funded? What are the lowest priority? Or are there any other urgent needs that needs to be considered? And so that's the feedback we're looking for today.
Hey, Sally, how you doing? It's LaWanda.
Hi, LaWanda.
Hey. On my only suggestion, I was looking for the grant, for the open period to apply, and I think it's already closed for this year.
It did. It closed January 15th.
Yeah, and I asked too soon, and then I looked again too late. And so I think one of the things that it should be, maybe the DABs could present the information when the grant period opens so we can push the information out. Like you said, you're looking for more people, and we could help facilitate that.
Okay. Any other comments?
Hi, Sally. I have a question. It's Nikayla here.
Hi.
With the demolitions that the city helps with, I'm wondering if that activity is there. I know if a property is condemned, then perhaps that is a pathway to that. But I'm wondering if there's any sort of strategy with, like, say, Habitat for Humanity, because I know that they look for lots that they can then do, like Rock the Block. So if that was the case, I think that could be an activity that could receive
I'm
higher
actually glad you brought that up. So it's hard with the condemnation cases. The city doesn't take ownership of the property. They're just taking down a dwelling that's dangerous and then places a lien on the property for the current owner. But one of the things the city's been working on is a land bank and the possibility of creating a land bank. And I serve on that committee as part of the Places for People plan. And that's one of my biggest strategies, is to say, can we use a mechanism like the land bank to either acquire properties through tax sale, foreclosures, those kind of things, an avenue that we could obtain property, and of course from the housing and community services world, make it available for affordable housing development, because everywhere we can cut some costs makes it easier for an infill house particularly to be built. And so there has been some discussions about using some of the CDBG funding as part of a pilot for land banking specifically for affordable housing. So yeah, it's a great point. Something we're definitely looking at.
Great, thank you.
I had to unmute real quick. On your screen share, are those questions still up or my notes?
That's the questions.
Great.
Anybody else?
Sally, question regarding the Chodos and infill. Chodos actually end up building new houses. What percentage of those actually end up in existing neighborhoods, older neighborhoods, filling in the gaps?
All of them. In honesty, all of them. And almost all of them are in District 1 at this point. That's just where the lots have been available, where we've been able to collaborate with those organizations. Because they're in their best interest to be able to find 2, 3, 4 lots in a general vicinity, because then they save a lot of money in staging and things like that. So even in Rock the Block alone, I think they're up to 56 infill houses there and still doing more. So yeah, definitely.
This is Camila. I unmuted to let new DAB members and members of the community know that Rock the Block is through Habitat for Humanity, and it runs from 9th Street to 13th Street North, Hillside to Grove in District 1.
Sorry about that.
Hey, Sally, I'm glad you talked about the land banking, because, we keep hearing land banking. And I've always like, well, what's going on with the property that they're land banking? And so if it's affordable housing, that's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, there have been some discussions about what, how limited should the land bank be, if they were to create one. I'm in the background going, anywhere I can get a lot for affordable housing to win. We're still having really in-depth discussions on how to structure such an avenue, but I think it would be absolutely fabulous for our affordable housing partners for sure.
So I know you said that part of the funds is used for first-time home buyers, or just home buyers?
It can be any low-income home buyers. It doesn't necessarily have to be their first time. Oftentimes it is. In good scenarios, it generally is their first time, because oftentimes that builds equity that rolls to a second purchase. And then those who weren't successful the first time often have a hard time getting a mortgage for a second time out. So it's not a requirement to be first.
Does that go through like the Power CDC, or do they contact the city? Do they contact the bank?
They contact the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Sally, I've got another kind of comment. If the funds were increased, if the allocation was increased, I'm wondering what the process would be, or if the interest would be to doing some type of having the allocation go to a housing fund similar to what they have in Nashville, where they have like artist and studio space, like a loan program. I think that could be something really.
So that type of activity we can do now through the home program, because that's about developing units, and we have the Housing Development Loan Fund, which is used for that specific purpose. We just kind of wait and get applications from interested developers, and then they apply for assistance. We review it, we do the underwriting, things like that. So yeah, I definitely agree.
Okay, so that's more of kind of the developer initiates that, they have that in mind, that concept, but then the home program is a resource the city has to help with that, basically.
Right, it's generally a gap filler. Home funds are generally, we just don't receive enough to be the major investor on a project, but it often fulfills the gap or lowers the cost so that they can make the units affordable in the long term.
So I unmuted Sally to say in the community a gap that I've noticed in my years on this job is a maker space. And so when I say maker space, like for artists, for culinary, at one point in time, like this was office space for people on East Harry, then that folded. But if I were able to rent a unit for because I have a cupcake business, if I were able to rent a unit because I'm an upcoming photographer and I just wanted to have some space of that nature, and if it was low to moderate income, whether it was women or minority based, any requirement that could fit into your funding is definitely needed in District 1.
Great. Could be a target of, we still have funding set aside from the last 2 years for small business assistance. That's definitely an area that once we roll that out, would be completely eligible for application.
Yeah, I like that idea of getting more office space, especially right now with everyone staying at home and working at home and often going to school at home. If folks who are starting out for the first time with their businesses could have access to that, that's great. I'd also want to say, as far as the makerspace, I have space over at the Go Create, and I'll just say this since it's on the topic, is that if you're low income, Go Create will cover your membership fee for all of their Create space. Now they don't have certain types of spaces beyond like woodworking, ceramics, metalworking, welding, printing, and stuff like that. Beyond that, for like photography, but if there's a way to potentially open up more memberships, I don't know if we can work with some of the funding to cover more memberships for individuals in the public to get that comp for like an entire year. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned a separate one, because it doesn't cover culinary there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely. I've been having conversations about the food entrepreneurs, and they're, really needing kitchen spaces. And I know Reverie rented out theirs and saw good participation with that. So that would be definitely something I think should be on the priority, as well as the youth program, the Way to Work program. I participated in that over the summer, and that was amazing. So I think that should definitely be a high priority, and have things for the youth like that. And I'm not sure what the youth enrichment programs were, but I think that expanding that if possible, for the youth. I mean, they're the ones, as we all know, the school situation they're just miserable with. And so providing any type of outlets, I think, is going to be a benefit to all.
Okay.
Sally, I know last year on the youth enrichment programs, you guys were requiring more measurables. Are you sticking to that, or is there a kind of a leeway because of COVID? They probably don't have the data.
Well, most of the youth programs either aren't operating at all, or they're operating very, very low participation to keep social distancing and things. That's definitely an area we have underspent in the last year. Completely understandable. We're giving all of our agencies, a pass on that. We're seeing the same issue. Even our home repair has been reduced because we've spent a majority of the time not entering people's homes unless it was an emergency, truly an emergency. So it's been a very strange year, to be honest with you. We've got a lot of great programs off the ground, but we've seen other programs slow down simply because of the virus.
So with the money that's not expended, what will you do with it?
Well, we will allow those agencies more time to carry that forward into this next, because our funding starts in July, especially that youth programming that kind of falls right in the middle. So, giving them more time to be able to expend that.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I ask, this is Camila again.
Yeah.
I'm typing all the notes too, so I'll go back and email them all to you.
I appreciate that.
On the way to work. So when the case said sparked, we have a gap in our community of 13-year-olds not being served. You can go to summer camp from 6 to 12, and you can start summer employment for 14 and up. So I actually challenged one of our Park and Rec departments to see if they could expand their youth camp to 13. Because if you have a 7th grader and a 3rd grader, your 13-year-old sits at home all summer.
Sure.
So I understand that maybe youth employment may not extend to age 14, but if we could have some summer camp extension to 13, that is very necessary.
Interesting. Yeah, right now our youth enrichment camps are specifically targeted for middle schoolers, so they do fall into that age group. And we're working with Real Men, Real Heroes, and Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and of course YMCA. Those, but yeah, that would be a very interesting information to actually share with those groups too, to see if maybe they can carve out something specific for those age groups. It's also a tough age because what group do you mix them with?
Right, and some parents, like my 13-year-old, would prefer to work, but the maturity level is not there. But if their camp could just be more, again, it's middle school engaged, so a technology style camp versus we're going to go play basketball and play board games camp. There's a difference to tailor to them. And if per se there was some dollars spent for that from your end, saying, hey, if you target middle schoolers this year, maybe that could entice them.
Well, we do target for the youth enrichment. It is middle schoolers. Yeah.
I understand. I just want you to know they're not offering camps for 13-year-olds. None of them are.
Yeah. Well, that's a good communication for us to give back to those who are submitting proposals to say we've identified this as a gap, for sure.
And Sally, and that goes back to exactly what I said. There are more organizations than just Real Men, Real Heroes that could actually serve a different demographic. St. Mark's does this program every summer. And so it's just a matter of us getting the word out, so more of these, because our youth are struggling and we do need more access for our youth. And again, a lot of organizations didn't know how to apply.
Okay.
Sally, one of the things I remember coming up during the budget discussion and feedback from citizens around the police and recently homelessness kept coming up time and time again, and more funding for homelessness. And so just looking at the breakdown here, and I'm sorry if you said it during your presentation, I'm just seeing, that ESG homelessness is getting 10%, 20% compared as a part of this pie, knowing that, we have a lot of challenges facing this community, but starting from just ground zero, from step one, getting individuals prioritized for homelessness prevention, for rehousing and emergency sheltering is, to me, that feels like the most critical step one, so that then we can deal with all these other needs of providing more food options, providing more support to the children. What is my bias would be more and more to homelessness, especially hearing that feedback. I think every single person who had a problem with the budget that spoke during that 10-hour council meeting was always bringing up homelessness. So that's just my opinion. If you could also tell me why it's divvied out like that with just a couple $100,000.
Well, that's set by the feds. That's set by Congress.
Okay.
Actually,
okay. I'm sorry.
The amount of money. No, that's fine. And actually, you're right on the right path. We've done a lot actually in the last year and a half to address homelessness, and in many different categories. Some of that came because of that additional CARES funding that we received, but some of it was just actually started even before COVID-19 came about. And we created a preference within the Housing Choice Voucher Program for up to 10% of those vouchers to be specific for people facing homelessness. Because, I laugh and people are like, what do you mean? I said, it shouldn't be like a ride at the amusement park, first one in line. We got to really address the people who are going to die if we don't do something about this. So, and we believe a 10% commitment to that, to homeless, to those experiencing homelessness can make a huge dent. But we've also done huge things related to, we've got now social work interns from WSU and Newman University is going to be working side by side with the homeless outreach team, being able to respond when an officer is needed, but not needed, you know what I'm saying? They get those calls. Right now it's the HOT team that goes. Oftentimes it's just a social worker who needs to go. So that's huge. It's a pilot program I'm really excited about. We got the community-based crime reduction grant of $1 million, which is it's gonna hit a little bit of District 1, but a lot of District 6. But it was really around crime rates and rates of homelessness and being able to provide additional caseworkers in that area. We've just done some tremendous work related to homelessness, created a landlord incentive program to encourage landlords to take a chance on people coming from homelessness. The 316 Hotel, I mean, that one was just amazing to be able to acquire that building and know that we're going to have permanent housing with wraparound services and case management for those experiencing homelessness for at least 15 to 20 years. I mean, it's been a huge focus for us, is addressing homelessness in the community. So
within that slice of the allocated funds, based on what you shared, which one, based on everything else that's going on with CARES funding and us trying to give you feedback on which activities are highest priority, I always feel emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, and rehousing is kind of the order for that in prioritizing. Where should we as DAB members, like, just for us to give you feedback, where's the gap for us to recommend based on all the other programs?
Well, the first thing I noticed coming into Wichita was we didn't have a really strong bridge out of homelessness. We have a lot of homeless shelters and we can put people on cots on floors, but we really didn't have this path to what's the next step. You can't go from living on a cot to, you can rent your own apartment, right? And so that's one of the things that we're really trying to build. One of the things we did notice though, I mean, and I've brought it up at a couple of council meetings, is it's more expensive for us to put people in a homeless shelter than it is in housing and provide them a case manager. That's crazy, right? So I'm not a huge proponent of building more shelter. It's about strengthening the partnerships and the resources and understanding that every person's an individual and their needs need to be individualized. But having a place to call their own and a means for having case management is really what we have to put together along with the rent assistance. Those are the, to really make people successful in coming out of homelessness. So it is really about trying to, there's no one correct answer for everybody, right? We have to have multiple options, multiple paths, I should say. And so that has been a huge focus. I know we kind of
appreciate you sharing that. No, I appreciate you sharing that so I understand where the money's coming from and it helps us moving forward, since this has been such a big feedback point from the public over the last few months.
Well, and you pointed out, we get $250,000 a year to deal with homelessness. This year we got an additional $3.3 million in CARES funds. That was telling from the federal government of how important it was to try and get people out of homelessness because of the spread of COVID-19. But it also gave us this opportunity to pilot some new programs so that we have some real data to say, hey, if we put money in the right places, we have much better outcomes.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I'd like to add one more thing, and this goes into what Sally said about the bridging. The 3 neighborhood resource centers that receive this federal dollars, when people come in this building and they say, how much is it to fax copy and free? I said, it's free. Your taxes paid for it already. And they're like, huh? And I say, yes, federal funding came down to the housing department to care for this resource center. And half of Wichita doesn't know that. So just promoting that alone can help. If any DAB member can share the 3 neighborhood resource centers. And we are that bridge of self-sufficiency. So before you get too far gone down that unfortunate poverty cycle role, what can we do to help you? And so our resource centers have been here. I saw 50 people alone today from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock today working in front desk, you guys. I saw 50 people. And so that is a very impressive number of who needs services, who needs resources, who has housing, who doesn't have housing. And so Sally, thank you for including your resource kids.
Thank you for your help too, because you helped get people to the resources. Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for providing your feedback. I will, if anyone has any questions on the new rent assistance program, I'm happy to answer those, even though that's outside of our community development plan. It's huge, $12 million, $12,048,219.50 to be exact.
I have
No
a
one can ever
question.
say. Sure.
Is it now when they did the funding with the state, it was an agreement between the landlord and the tenant, and they both had to apply together. Is that the same concept?
No, not necessarily. See, this is one advantage we have to administering it is if they're already a vendor in our system, we don't need the landlord.
Okay.
I can issue them a check without their involvement. If they're already a vendor. And because we serve so many through Housing First, through the voucher program, at least half the landlords in the community are already set up in our systems. However, if it's a landlord that is not already in the systems, they will need to cooperate, and that we need to set them up as a vendor.
Okay, so if I'm behind on my rent, I can say, well, I rent from ABC, and you'll look in your system. Okay, they're already registered with us. We can cut them a check, and you guys send like the correspondence. This is for LaWanda, for May rent.
We can. We're likely to still interact. We think it's good communication. We're going to be reaching out through the landlords also. It's going to be interesting. This is very different than the other programs that have come before it. So we've been running emergency assistance since March of last year through the CSBG program. And then we partnered with the state for a while on their KEP program. This one is very different because not only is it going to can it catch people up, but it can pay rent going forward. So that the total assistance can be 12 months, up to 12 months, if they income qualify. The biggest challenge we have is the funding must be used for households that have had a financial impact related to COVID-19. And I'll tell you, only about 50% of the people who apply have a financial impact related to COVID-19. And that's unfortunately, those who don't feel like they're being cheated, but that's in the regulation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be they've lost their job. It can be reduced hours, reduced tips. It can be increased expenses related to childcare because of remote schooling. It can be increased medical expenses tied to COVID. But there has to be that financial impact related to COVID-19. And it's rent and utilities, arrears, and perspective for up to 12 months, depending. So it's a real game changer. The state actually received additional money that would cover our population. So we're working with the state, even though we've received 12 million, the state's received, I think, 180 million to cover all of the rest of the state, including the city of Wichita. But right now we're working collaboratively so that we can serve Wichitans first. And then there's additional funding that could either be partnered with us. I mean, it's a good thing. It's much needed, but it is a much bigger deal than KEP was or even our EAP program. So
do
we are
they
working
go online to apply? Do they call?
They will go online to apply. The application is not up yet. We're still working with IT on the application and then the background, because we have to make sure there's not duplication of benefits. We have to be able to set up systems to be able to make these payments. We're shooting for mid-month to be able to start taking applications. We'll make an announcement 7 days before the application goes live, because we want to make sure that everyone knows the application is going live before it actually does. So it's not just people you know who are getting on that list, right? And then we'll start, processing. But, there is documentation. Department of Treasury is where the money's coming from. They've been very specific. We have to have source documentation. So people have to prove their income, prove their economic impact. It's not necessarily an easy thing. So we'll need a copy of the lease. We need a copy of the late notices, rent and utilities, that documentation of financial impact and current income information. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it can be overwhelming. And so we're going to be working with the neighborhood resource centers as a place people could go for help. If they need a public use computer, need a little guidance. We're trying to keep the application as simple as possible. but still collect the needed information. It's going to be a game changer, I think, for our community.
Quick question, two on that piece, and you you answered one of them already. But what is the turnover of, like, someone applies when it goes live? How long is the potential turnover to receive that assistance?
We can provide assistance for up to 12 months. So if I'm paying 3 months retro rent to catch you up, we could do up to 9 months going forward, but we have to recertify every 3 months. So it's a period of 12 months.
What about the first check to the landlord? If I qualified, I think that's what he's saying. If I turn my application on March 15th, what's the turnaround time for my landlord?
Here's the key. If you turn in every single document we ask for, it should be paid within a week.
Okay.
The problem is we don't get every single document that's needed. That's what slows things down, unfortunately. So we're working to partner with Workforce Alliance to have boots on the ground there to help people too, but also to be that liaison, to be able to help us be able to prove someone applied for unemployment or were laid off due to COVID-19. They'll be sending the information out to employers and workers who are in their system as laid off due to COVID-19. We're working with Kansas Legal Aid to get the information out through them. We've made arrangements with Sedgwick County to have caseworkers actually positioned in the bullpen, which is the first floor jury room where they call it the line of doom. It's where people line up to fill out their paperwork as to whether or not they're going to contest an eviction. So we're going to actually have staff there every Wednesday when that happens to try and intercede when people are coming in response to an eviction. So we're really trying, and then we're working with 211 to have 211 be actually the first call. It's the first place people can call, is just call 211. If you're interested, they'll tell you how to connect.
That's all amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And really quick on the piece that you mentioned where every 3 months you have to recertify, does that mean that the person has to apply every 3 months?
No, that's one of those great things. So we are running it through the same system we use for the voucher program. So we're able to keep them in the system, qualify them. When they're up to have to recertify, they'll be sent a notice. We need to recertify your income. We've already certified you had a COVID-related impact. We need to recertify your income right now. If you continue to be income eligible, which is under 80% area median income, we can do another 3 months forward.
Awesome.
And catch up any utilities. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mila, and my final question is, do I have to have a valid ID? Because my ID expired November of 2020 and have not made it back to the DMV. That's my example.
Sure. We do need some form of identification, yeah, unfortunately. And that can be a hiccup for people.
But does it have to be valid?
Yes, it has to be a valid ID, yeah, unfortunately. But that can be state ID, driver's license, passport, and it can be a barrier for people. But we have to be able to prove the person we're serving is the person that is identified. You can imagine this program could be wrought with fraud. So that's why Treasury is making sure we get source documents.
Yeah, I'm less about fraud and more about if the state is allowing my ID to be expired for 90 days, why wouldn't this program allow my ID to be expired for 90 days and let me conduct the business that I need to take?
Because Treasury is requiring that we have valid source documents. And yeah,
I'm just making a statement now that we need to
I hear you.
People in the community to go get a valid state ID, go take your $22 or your $25 and make sure your ID is valid right now so it won't hinder you from this later. Not trying to argue.
Because if you can imagine the dollar amount that a family could be eligible for, that's a great investment. But yes, be part of the conversation, is get your documents. That's what's posted on our website right now too, is while you're waiting for the application to come out, get your documents together. Because the quicker we have all the documents, the quicker we can get people qualified, get their rent caught up and get them on. It is just rent, by the way, and that's per Treasury. This is a rental assistance program, not mortgage. But we do hear that of course, the Biden next relief plan has mortgage assistance in it, but you don't know, how much of that's actually going to get approved in the long run. We also hear there's going to be another $30 billion in rent assistance in the Biden plan.
So not to bring us too far back, but again, just kind of based off of what Camila was saying about the having a driver's license and communities or individuals experiencing homelessness. I know some communities have actually started programs where they're waiving for individuals who are experiencing homelessness or have some sort of a financial need, right? They're waiving those ID fees. And I don't know if
I'm sorry, that's because the feds have allowed that waiving through waivers. There have been over 140 waivers issued by the Department of Housing and Urban Development of things like that. We're allowed to do self-certification of income in some of the HUD programs. Treasury saying no.
Okay.
You must get source documents. Yeah. And I think that's to protect for fraud.
Services that we can provide for the community, you know, in terms of those experiencing homelessness, or those potentially on the brink of homelessness, like some of those basic things that people need, right? Like an identification, an address, a phone, you know, and those types of things, right? If that's in terms of programs or services we may offer at some point in the future, that might be worth looking into.
Well, we do for homelessness, and through our homelessness funding, we actually provide funding to agencies to assist people in getting their identification so that they don't have these types of barriers going forward. And it's not as easy as you think. If you don't have ID, trying to get ID is really, really challenging. We're also able, another legal form of ID we can use is a rap sheet. It's not my favorite form of ID, but we can use it because it is coming from a government system that provides identification of the person. We do that in the homeless program sometimes because we can't get any other form of ID.
I mean, that's good to know, right? I mean, to put out there as a form of identification. So.
Yeah, they charge us 25 cents to get a rap sheet. I always laugh and say, I'll bring it to you. Yeah, it's so worth 25 cents.
20 bucks or whatever. Yeah. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Here's a credit, work it off. Yeah. No.
But because someone might come back and hear this, that's the rap sheet is not valid for this.
No,
eviction.
no, that's just in the homeless programs, right? Yeah. And this funding can't be used for homeless services at this point. There's a lot of push from around the country for this emergency rental assistance program to be able to be used for homelessness. At this point, the Treasury's answered more than once saying no. This is meant to get people who have a rental agreement now so that they're not evicted. It's not designed to be housing the homeless program. Yeah. Okay. Great questions. Thank you. You get asked them a lot. We're really working on trying to get that application open as soon as possible. And so if you know people that have had a COVID-related financial impact, please send them to our website. We're calling it the Wichita the Wichita Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So it's WERAP. So wichita.gov//WERAP will get you to the information. Right now it says the application will be posted here soon, but it also gives the documentation and things that people will need.
Thank you, Sally.
Anytime. Thank you very much for having me. And I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
Sally. All right. So that actually wraps up the majority of the agenda. We'll go ahead and move into item number 12, update issues and reports. And with that, I'm going to pass it over first to Vice Mayor.
Thanks, Aaron. I just real quick just wanted to clarify something from earlier. You know, as an elected official, sometimes when you say things, there are different perspectives and it often spreads really quickly. So I've been getting some messages about something that was said earlier. I don't think I said it in a way that did not clarify what I have been saying all day, but I want to clarify on this meeting that I did not, in fact, say that the Dockham sit-in was not the first sit-in. I did say, because words matter, that if there was something else out there, we have not seen documentation. This is important because, as I also said earlier, I've been talking with my NBC Leo colleagues about the first documented sit-in, and you will hear, if you were there with me in Miami last year or in Jackson, Mississippi, people vehemently say that Greensboro was the first sit-in in America. The problem with that is we know 2 years before Greensboro was Wichita, Kansas. What I am doing as an elected official is saying that what we know at this point is that the Dockham sit-in was the first one, because there could be a situation where I end up like some of those folks. I say what we know with the documentation that we have, that the Dockham sit-in was the first one. That's why I've shared it all day. I just wanted to make sure that we all heard that. Second, I'm also hearing about the Chester Lewis Reflection Park and what I said about the statue that's there. Statue as in the table that is supposed to represent the Dockham sit-in. At the table for the committee working on the Chester Lewis Reflection Park is family members of Chester Lewis himself, the Wichita Branch NAACP, the Kansas African American Museum, and a few other folks from around the community, architect-wise, looking at the design here and looking at the history with our Parks Department. The Downing Foundation gave multiple statues downtown. One of them is what is now considered the Dockham sit-in memorial statue. None of the records that we have been given, and I'll say that I have been giving in this meeting with community stakeholders, have said that that is historically accurate. Therefore, my comments earlier were what I have been told. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew who was on that committee, that that's what had been shared, and that I was sharing that information, because I am getting concerns from people saying that I stated earlier, one, the Dockham sit-in might not be the first one, and then two, my comments about the statue not being correct. I just wanted to share that on the same public meeting as I did earlier, because I do understand that oftentimes as an elected, when you say things, folks may take it a different way. So hopefully that clears up the confusion. Again, as I've shared, and I know Dr. Vesey and Miss Peggy was my banker since I was a teenager. As we know, the documentation shows that the Dockham sit-in was the first one. If something happened somewhere else in this country that we haven't heard about, we don't know that yet. But right now, the documentation shows the Dockham sit-in is the first one. It happened here in Wichita on Douglas and Broadway. So I just wanted to correct that, just to make sure that everybody heard me correctly and what I was actually saying and what I was alluding to. Because again, as I've been doing all day with all the folks who continue to say Greensboro was the first, I send them a link to the Today Show today and say, I don't know about that one. Ours is the first one. So thanks, Aaron. I just wanted to clear that up for the District Advisory Board and anybody who might be tuning in at home that may have thought I said something differently than I actually said.
Brandon, thank you very much. It's got to be tough to have all of your words criticized or at least scrutinized so close. You do it well, sir. All right. I don't have any specific comments or updates, issues, or reports. And I'm looking at my screen and Katie's next up. Katie, you got anything? All right. Michaela?
No updates.
Tex?
Hey, just I did the Zoom tonight on my iPhone, so apologies to my fellow DAB members because I can't see when anyone's raising their hand or the chat. I'm just on that main screen, so I apologize if you were like raising your hand and I spoke over you. I don't know if I did, but if I did, I apologize thoroughly. And yeah, so sometimes I might be on my phone, and that's what that is. But outside of that, I have a pretty cool announcement about an organization known as StoryCorps. Many of us have probably listened to StoryCorps episodes over the years on NPR or seen some of their animated recordings on YouTube and other video platforms where family members are often recording each other, like a great-grandparent who immigrated to the US talking to her great-granddaughter. StoryCorps has a new project called One Small Step, which is really addressing the dehumanization and polarization that's plaguing, that many people feel is plaguing our society. And Wichita is going to be one of 4 cities that StoryCorps is focusing on for the entire next year, where they're going to have a few dedicated days every month to recording and matching one person in our city with another person in our city, often of different political, socioeconomic, and ethnic backgrounds. And the goal is, beyond these recording days, to also have a do-it-yourself option, as well as options to go to churches, nonprofits, civic organizations, and do actually designated recording days, so that we can almost get a big enough sample of the Wichita population sitting down and having conversations and realizing that we all face similar challenges and difficulties in our lives. And really, there's more that can unite us than divide us, because the polling that StoryCorps did showed that in Wichita alone, 61% responded to a poll saying, my city is more divided right now than it has been in my entire lifetime here. But 90% also responded saying we can learn how to be better people by looking to the experiences of each other. And so a lot of these questions, it's pairing one-on-one, 40-minute time. Over the next couple months, I'll send more information out to the DAB, and I've encouraged StoryCorps and the representatives to come and actually address each of the DABs and utilize our great networks, because I think if we do a groundswell of interviews with key community stakeholders and individuals, they've actually shown polling doing this in other cities where when they did the polling at the end, it cut down on the perceived polarization within the city. And for Wichita to have such a unique history and unique identity around the flag and around some of our values and perseverance, I think this is a great opportunity. And I think we're kind of exciting to see that Wichita is one of the target cities. So I will be sending out more information. But if you want more information right now, StoryCorps.org/one-small-step. That's StoryCorps.org/one-small-step. Thank you.
Thank you, Tex. Lawanda, you're up next.
No updates. Thank you.
Yep, very good. Donna, you're up.
A reminder of Books and Breakfast on 2nd and 4th Saturday of the month. So that'd be the 13th and the 27th of this month. We operate out of St. Paul AME, 1756 North Pyatt, from 10 to 11:30. We give fresh hot meal, breakfast meal, and a bag of food, a free book, and some book resources. So anyone's welcome to come out. There's no income restrictions. Anyone in need or would just like to come out and participate, you are welcome.
Well done. Gabriel.
I have nothing for tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Ruben?
I have no updates.
And please forgive me if I missed anybody else on the DAB.
Amy and Danielle.
Very good. Jamie, can you go first?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Only update I have is I've been holding like a grief support group in my funeral home called Divorce Flanagan Hunt Mortuary off of 2nd and Hydraulic. And so this month I'm holding it there on February 16th from 6 to 7. And it's not open just to the families that we serve at the funeral home, but anyone in the community. And we just kind of talk about our grief and work through it and try to come out lighter than we did coming in.
Email that or throw it in the chat so I can put in the notes and share before it takes place.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Can I, as Danielle is unmuting, she had a comment previously, and not that we have the answer to it, but I just want to acknowledge her comment earlier in the chat of unemployment. She asked, has pandemic unemployment assistance payments began this year yet? And I'm not aware of those. I think the unemployment part is individually based on when you apply and when your weeks run out with the state.
Thank you, and I have no updates.
Okay, she said thanks, no other updates.
Very good. I apologize, I didn't hear.
It was very faint, but I did. If I may, real quick, there are a couple things to kind of keep in mind as far as, oh, I just drew a blank. The house on South Chautauqua. So literally went to court on the 28th. So after that, in January, we discussed that housing concern in South Chautauqua, Sunnyside. That young lady who was gifted the house basically from her mother, and then her brother was staying in it with no running utilities. So I'm waiting on the inspection report of what happened on 28th, if she showed up, if she didn't, what resources she did or didn't take. Oh my gosh, the police department did not report it because they're not going to say it yet. The body found on 9th and Ash is a teenager. It's not an adult. It was on the news this morning. We have a high gang violence crime rate right now. Whatever you can do or say do for our youth in this community right now, please go love on them, go give them something else to do outside of school. But that is a 17-year-old, and we need to stay prayerful and keep our community busy right now. And this is not going to be comfortable, but another house, there was a drive-by shooting today, and the owner is someone who we have brought to you before as far as renting people and not doing backgrounds before, just allowing anyone to live there. And I know people need a place to live, but the continuous revolving door of the same landlord issue and the same gang violence is still happening in District 1.
Camila, thanks for the updates. All right, everybody, I believe that actually kind of addresses everything that was on the agenda. I've made a handful of motions tonight. Anybody else want to make one?
Motion to adjourn to put to the honor.
Nikayla
Very good.
seconds.
Fantastic. I'm going to assume no more discussion, and all those in favor say aye.
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 I'm going to assume that was unanimous. Everyone, have a great evening. Congratulations, Vice Mayor. And see you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.